Off a day and good morning, Guam! Merry Christmas. This oversight hearing conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts is hereby called to order at 9:10 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on December 11, 2023, with the second notice provided on December 16, 2023. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and on the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This morning, the committee is holding its monthly oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education. The items for discussion are the following: status update on facilities and maintenance, capital improvement projects and public health compliance, Head Start Quality Improvement Plan implementation, reorganization of GDOE, consolidation to include consolidation and closure of schools, cross-leveling status update on 180 days of instructional time mandate compliance. We'll also invite the public to comment. I'd like to welcome my colleague joining us today, Senator Jesse Lujan. And now I'd like to go over the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chair of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislator in Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature's standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal of the hearing from the hearing by the host. And we will now begin with the oversight hearing. I want to thank the Guam Department of Education leadership for showing up today on the first day of what is for our students Christmas break. And I'm hoping to hear that this time is anything but a break for the hardworking people of the Guam Department of Education. So I'd like to recognize Superintendent Dr. Kenneth Swanson, and he's also joined by Deputy Superintendent Ken Perez and Deputy Superintendent Joanne Camacho, as well as the numerous leadership seated in the gallery behind them. And so good morning, Superintendent.
Good morning, Senators. We're happy to be here. The folks that are with me are actually the content area specialists that can answer more detailed questions than I probably ever could or should. So that's why they're here with us. But the first item on the agenda is facilities and maintenance and campus improvements. So I'll run over the high points of that, and then we can move through the agenda at the pace that you desire. First of all, the GW High School gym project is completed. We signed off on completion with the contractor last week. He's cleaning up and moving his equipment out of the area so that students can resume using that facility on the 2nd of January. And the way that I'm hearing from the athletic director, probably before that, to get practice underway. Finally, we have that gym in operation after several years of a condemned status. The next big project is the FBLG refurbishment project. You realize that those middle school students are at Ukadu in the evening, so they're doubled up on another campus. That project bid has been awarded, and we're in the process now of adding funding to it because the bid came in over our projected level, but we have that process in motion with USAID to use our ARP funds. We need to add another about $2.5 million to the project. The contractor will have a year to perform, so my goal is that by this time next year, FBLG students are back on their own campus in a refurbished environment. School refurbishment projects, as I told you the last time we were together, the bid came in several $100 million over the budget we had. So in order not to lose the funding we do have through ARP, I've made a determination to target specific schools in that project. And those are George Washington High School, Ocean View Middle School, Agata Johnston Middle School, Inarahan Middle School, Ordat Chalampago Elementary, D.L. Perez Elementary, and Tamuning Elementary. That will leave approximate balance of about $7 million for contingencies. If we don't run into additional charges on these projects, we'll likely add another school. The range of estimates, building by building, is from $6 to $20 million depending on the campus. High school campuses obviously are the most expensive. So after reallocation of funding, an appropriate balance of $7 million remains. Funding allocation changes for the project have been submitted to USAID, and the response from them is what they have to do is change the category from where it's reserved so that when the allocation goes through and the billing happens, it all matches. We are meeting with the general contractor, which is Cortec, to reveal that they're ready to start as soon as those, and there's 4 different contracts, one for each region of the system. They won the bid for all of them. So as soon as that contract language is finalized and approved by the AG and the governor, they'll start work. First step is that we have in that process is coordinating the campus work with principals to ensure that student safety is a factor and that contractor access is available so they can do the work as needed. The Head Start program is a separate area of facilities. It's a different funding category, and we'll talk more about that later. I know that you have it as a question. But there's submission of bids requests for there's 2 levels that we're working with. One is safe passage and safe playground areas. We've identified those positions on each campus, each of the 20 campuses. We have a fast-track procurement effort through to put the fences in. That's what the Head Start folks want first so that we can secure the area. The playgrounds themselves, the apparatus that will go on them, that's a separate bid. That's a longer-term process. But to meet the needs that they want by March the 5th, that's the safe, secure play space for the students, and we'll have that. The target that we have in our procurement process will have that contract awarded by the beginning of February with a completion by the end of February to put those fences in, and they include fences near the classrooms that channel pedestrian flow and the playground areas themselves. So, let's see. The public health compliance process is continuing. Fact of the matter, this week, Estumbo Elementary School is being inspected. At least that's what's on the agenda. The majority of our maintenance teams are assigned and preparing schools for inspection. So there's a team at Estumbo with the inspectors, and there are 2 teams out in schools that are scheduled to be next in the sequence. So, and that leaves 1 team behind to handle emergency situations on all of our campuses. Mr. Palomo can provide more detailed information for you. He has been able to select and offer employment to additional technicians just this week. We hope they accept the job, but there were several folks that he was able to interview that are qualified and will help us out in all the building trades. We have, let's see, what else? That process continues. We have a calendar worked out that will continue into the summer, and this is where it is important for us to again request that legislation be considered to change the date for expiration of the permits. If we can have that anniversary date expiration, that lets us just maintain a continuous cycle of revisiting campuses and improving them. So in that area, that's all my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So we're going to go ahead and break after each of the topics to give my colleagues a chance to ask questions.
So my content area experts are here.
Okay. I'd like to recognize Senator Tello-Taitigui also for good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Right on. Okay, so let's just start with the status of the facilities and maintenance, capital improvement projects, public health compliance. So in your November 28 report to the board, and I'm just going to go ahead and read this off into the record. The initial project to refurbish roofs, canopies, restrooms, electrical, and concrete repair is being revised to address those issues on selected schools. The initial $80 million budget was well under the sole bidder's estimate of $280 million, thus eliminating the possibility of addressing all the schools listed. We will engage the vendor to perform the services bid on selected schools, reserve some funds for contingencies, and as you had said, reallocate $2 million from the original $80 million to supplement the project bid for the FBLG refurbishment projects. While this leaves multiple school projects unfunded, it will maximize the ARP before those funds with ARP dollars that are not earmarked. The primary consideration is the remaining work beyond structural repairs to the GW gym nearing completion, interior painting and locker room refurbishment also needed. So let me just start here because I'm trying to figure out how in the span of just a few months we went from talking about district-wide projects to refurbish every bathroom in the district-wide projects to refurbish every door, to install more accessible doors and doors that don't expand when we get rain or typhoons, or doors that don't fit in the molding. Obviously, it's a big issue. Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out how we went from discussing here in this room on the record how all these different projects were going to get done, and then come to find out that you're $200 million short, and now instead of having these projects performed across the district, we're only going to see refurbishment conducted at 6 schools. So GW, Ocean View Middle School, Inalahan Middle, Orat Chalampago Elementary, DL Paris, and Tamuning Elementary. And I'm disappointed because I didn't find this out. I mean, I know we had spoken about it, but I found out from facilities and maintenance when I was on site at Marshall Saban Elementary School. A staff there had showed me a bathroom that is supposed to be closed off, but because it's the only bathroom in that area around those classrooms, the students are using it. And it's a terrible bathroom. Sinks are rusted out, doors falling apart. And then I ran into Mr. Palomo, and he informed me that Marshall Saban was not on the list for any of the refurbishment contracts. So if you could just explain, I mean, other than, you know, the bid came back much more expensive than you thought, how did we go from saying we're going to do these projects across the district and everybody's school was going to get the assistance and the repairs it needed to now only 6 schools?
The schools that we have scheduled are the ones that we know we can actually execute. And they're, after our examination and by comparison, they're in the greatest level of need. That there's no argument that we need to do the entire district. The contract bid came back at the level that it did, which was way beyond the expectation. I had no involvement in the preparation of the initial project. That was done before my tenure began. So the caps that were set in the ARP funding were pre-existing. That's why we have to make the adjustments. The fact that we need to do this work in all the schools is without argument. We're continuing. Now, one of the things that we did, and we don't have the results of our net capacity increase, but we were able to transfer money using the ESF funds and ARP to recover funds, move them back into our ARP account. We'll continue to use that money, and I want to add to this list, but to get to all 40 campuses, that's a really, really tall order, and we don't have the funding to do it at this point. There are also funds that we're looking into with the Department of Agriculture that we can get grant funding, but I haven't got anything concrete on that yet. I certainly don't want to report it to the community as this is what we're going to do. And we are also working closely with DODEA and Defense Department folks because they are anticipating that the ramp up that they are seeing in eligible students to attend DODEA schools will exceed their capacity, so they are interested in doing renovation and repair work in some of our campuses that are adjacent to Anderson and the Navy base. So we continue to work all of this. This is what I have for now. I cannot allow these funds to lapse or be lost. That is certainly unacceptable.
What about yes, ma'am?
If I may, sir, we also have about
Ms. Joanne, could you just identify yourself for the record?
Oh, sorry. My name is Joanne Camacho, Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Administration. We do have about $500,000 identified through ARP for IFB and IQB for various maintenance supplies and materials. And those will be used to, as the doors need to be fixed, we'll do those things. So it's not like they're totally forgotten, but we need to focus on those major projects. So I hope that will help.
Thank you, ma'am. So, just as it stands today, Mr. Superintendent, are you basically saying that we're not going to conduct any repairs at Marshall Sablon or any other schools that weren't listed on this? Just for clarification.
No, we're going to continue to work on all of our schools, and they're in the sequence that we're going to be able to have them inspected. And what is in place right now is that we have 2 teams that are out in front of the scheduled inspection date that are working on the schools to get them repaired. So they are actually doing that work as they possibly can. John, you want to talk about what you're doing with that? Yeah, tell them how you got it set up.
Good morning. John Palomo, Building Maintenance Superintendent, Acting Manager of F&M. So our strategy, our goals is to get in front of the public health. We're doing it by, we assessed them the demerits that we thought that they were going to have, that we're putting that in order. So from lowest to highest, right now we were able to get all the schools inspected that were at the lowest part of the criteria of their inspection that we had put forward. Now we're getting into where the schools are a lot more lengthy repairs, if you would, more of the older schools now. So with that being said, we're trying to get in front. Right now it's taking like about, it looks like it's gonna take a month for the team to actually get there, start performing their repairs and going across the whole entire campus. Right now they're at Truman. Once they're done with this, Stumble getting inspected, they'll move down to Sablon. So Truman and Sablon are the lowest right now, but it's going to take them about a month, both of them. It's going to take a month. From here on out, it's going to take my team about a month to get these schools ready for inspection. And that's the goal, is to not stop. Even though the holidays are here, we don't stop working. We're still going to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Palomo. Can you just explain what are some of the commonalities that you're seeing at these different schools as you prepare them for inspection ahead of time?
So most of these doors that you know, I know you're saying some of the doors are going to get changed. However, those are the doors that are under the refurbishment contract. They're going to be metal. We don't have that material, so we're doing wood. We're going to continue to do wood up until we can get the refurbishment contract. So that termites too. Marshall Sablon has a lot of Butler tin structures. They're not hardened, so they're pretty much tin, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. That's all we have, and that's some of those schools. That's all that they have for those classrooms. So we're going to do what we can to repair them and keep them going up until we can.
Can you, just on a separate note, what is the status with the walkways? So Talafofa Elementary, Juan Guerrero, I know DLP was under the DOI project, Jose Rios, I'm sure you know there are many schools with the walkways. So are those on a separate project, and how are we going to fix those?
The canopies are on the refurbishment contract if they are on your school. But if they're not on your school, then we have to fix them. And we will. So this public health inspection is kind of lengthy for us, even to when we first get in. And we're going to try and do what we can, sir, with the amount of people that we have to work. And we're going to do it as fast as we can as well.
So specifically the Juan Guerrero, because when I came in, we had talked about this with the former acting superintendent, that the walkway there is just dilapidated, and the kids have to kind of, and the wheelchair-bound students have to off-road through the grass. And I just drove by the school the other day, and so it's still caution taped off, and you're saying that that's not included in the list of the 6 schools, so that's just going to fall specifically on facilities and maintenance to repair?
Yes, sir. And then when we can, I'm thinking that just by looking at those 2, actually 3 canopies, even the one in the back, that's going to take us some amount of time to repair. And doing that, I'm going to take away from the public health inspections. So I really don't want to do that either.
Well, you definitely have your work cut out for you. So you're moving ahead of the public health inspections, and then you also have the other refurbishment that facilities and maintenance is going to have to take care of since it's not going to fit under the contract. And then what is the extent of your involvement relative to Head Start and the implementation of the quality improvement plan?
Head Start, we're just trying to give them guidance, especially on the fencing, map it out and to put it out how they want it, also with the specs and what they want, how they want to do it. Of course, like when we think about a fence, you don't really care where the posts are at, but we care about the post has to be outside of the fence. So if a child was to rub up against the fence, they wouldn't get hit by the post. So that's stuff that we look into as well. I mean, we're assisting with them as well to try and write up the scope of work.
Okay. And there's no issue with funding relative to, and we'll get into Head Start because it's its own separate agenda item. But relative to the fencing, so I know that there's been some communication with the governor's office, I believe, about these projects. We're still talking about these projects related to Typhoon Mawar and the whole DLAN process. And so, Superintendent, I didn't see anything in your...
I do have some notes on that. I missed it. I apologize. Yes, to separate fences, first of all, the fence that's in the D-line category is all perimeter fencing on all the campuses. The fence conversation for Head Start is for play areas and safe passageways on the 20 campuses where Head Start operates. They're two different projects. The Head Start projects are funded through Head Start, and the funding for that work is in place. And we've been going through a process to transfer from previous years into the current year so that the budget dollars are available to do that work. The addition of playground equipment may have to be funded through an additional grant that's available to us with Head Start, but that project is separate from all the rest of it.
Can I just ask, so I understand that the job ticket in the D-LAN is for the perimeter fencing around all the schools, and I know this because I go out to the schools and our students are exposed to a lot of security and safety risks relative to this lack of perimeter fencing. I mean, you could have any, drunk person, a drugged person, a pervert could walk onto these campuses at any time. And as you've seen, these fight videos are evidence that we just don't have the staff to adequately monitor. I mean, Head Start's saying the same thing too. We don't have the staff to adequately monitor the kids. So what I was wondering is if this perimeter fencing is in any way going to meet the compliance of Head Start. For example, at DL Paris, you have Head Start, and then they don't have a perimeter fence. So are we going to be able to catch any of these areas of non-compliance by pushing through this project for the perimeter fencing, or are we having to have separate fencing for the Head Start areas inside the perimeter?
They are two separate programs, and the fencing for the students in Head Start is internal to the campus. The security fencing for the rest of all of the campuses is the larger project. That is the second one on the list in terms of the DLAN process. The primary one is mold mitigation.
Where's that at?
Right now it's at the AG's office. And
may I?
Go ahead.
Please. Yeah.
Yes, so we have the scope of work for mold mitigation and the fencing of all the school perimeters is in the works. There should be an advertisement, I believe, not this week, next week, for interested bidders to be able to do this, to do the work.
So this is still an RFI that's going out on the mold mitigation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're pushing, sir, and it is being addressed through DLAN, GSA, and the Attorney General's office.
I'm just tired of hearing that. I'm tired. All year we've been talking about this $20 million.
I know, sir, honestly, it's a slow process, but we're complying and we're doing everything we can and giving them the information they need to make it happen. So,
I know, ma'am. I know. With all due respect, we've been discussing this for the entire term, and I know that you're relatively new to the department, but yeah, there's just so much runaround with this $20 million. So where are we at now? I read in one of your reports that we've gone from 20 to now, what, $16 million?
That's
Or
correct.
14?
14.
Okay. Can you explain?
My understanding is that the $7 million was what we were charged back for the activation of the National Guard to do debris removal.
Okay. And so it cost the Guam Department of Education $7 million to have the National Guard remove debris from all of the schools. Were you specifically charged for that, or did DOE end up paying for other agencies?
I have not
Typhoon?
seen a breakout of the cost. We're
Okay.
still asking for that.
Because as you know, that 20 million was commingled in an account with other funds for Typhoon Mawar projects. But you know, I have a little homework assignment for you, Mr. Superintendent. Over the Christmas break, there's a press release that came out from the Office of the Governor, and this is in February. And it's got the Lieutenant Governor's picture on here, and in this press release, he's talking about how he is going to use the whole of government to fix the schools. And so we have a lieutenant governor with obvious political aspirations making empty promises to our school system. And so I think if we want things to move faster, you have to do a better job of calling this kind of thing out. So during the Christmas break, I think it would behoove you to write a letter to the lieutenant governor and ask him what he was talking about and what kind of action we're going to see for our public school kids. Because I'm tired of coming in here and hearing that nothing's been done with the Mawar and the D-Land process. I'm tired of it, especially when you have the administration talking about how they're helping you guys and they're giving you purchase orders. So if you could, I think it'd be a great idea for you to engage the administration and to tell them to come through on their promises, because the school system definitely needs it. And DOE, as we've heard, we're not even 30 minutes into this hearing, and the only good news is GW Gym is ready to go, Biba Geckos. Yeah, so I'm just saying that there are ways for you. I know you're new in town and you got thrown through the ringer with this whole $20 million, but you got to go to bat for our school system and for our school kids. We have worked with you so many times. We have been through countless hearings, and I'm just not happy with the progress. And part of why I'm not happy is because we have a whole administration that has promised to help fix our schools. We're still talking about mold mitigation. And so you as a leader should do what you can to get the resources you need for the Guam Department of Education, especially when we have other leaders saying that that's exactly what they're going to do.
Sir, point noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, sir, just to let you know that we're also working, because we met him once, but we haven't met the rest. And we were supposed to give information to him, the LT, regards to his, but we haven't met. So him publicizing that is actually...
Well, this is from February of last year, sir.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, you guys got to hold these people accountable when they're out here
Right.
talking about how they're going to help fix the schools, and you don't get the help you need, and it's been the same song and dance, Mr. Superintendent. You've come in here so many times, and you've talked about how you're not getting the help. You want the $20 million back. No, never mind, let them keep it. But if you're not going to hold them accountable, we don't know what to do up here.
Sir, they're not keeping the money. I'm on it. I'm working with
Well, I want to see results,
BDMR.
ma'am. I want to see results.
I know. It's
Okay.
just unfortunate how things are
No,
not...
because you know what? If other projects have moved forward, and I don't know what this, what the explanation is for the Guam Department of Education being treated like this, but you should not be treated like the redheaded stepchild of the government of Guam. We should all be falling all over ourselves to help our kids in our public schools.
Sir, we had the same mission, and like I said, we'll
Thank
certainly
you.
take
Yeah.
that to point.
Well, I want to see it. I want to see the letter. I want to hear results. I mean, we're in here every month calling you guys down here to keep tabs on you, and it will truly take a whole of government approach, and the legislature cannot do it by ourselves. So Merry Christmas. All right, let's talk about this air conditioner contract. Yeah, so actually let's pause before I get into the AC because I feel like this is just going to be another, and I'd like to recognize my colleagues now for any questions, and also like to recognize Senator Sabina Flores Perez. Good morning. Senator Jess Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, panel. Good morning, Dr. Swanson, Mr. Perez, First Lady Joanne Camacho. Good morning. Merry Christmas. Dr. Swanson, you said, okay, these 6 schools basically that have been designated as having the greater level of need, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you said between $6 and $20 million were basically the, between the 6 schools, between $6 and $20 million were the designation on, depending on which school it was and how much it's going to require, how much money is required for their refurbishment, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you said it has been awarded to Cortec. The 6 schools have been awarded to Cortec?
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, and that's good because, I mean, a bigger contractor, because I was going to ask that, whether these schools had different bid packages out and whether different contractors were awarded. My understanding of Cortec, they have the manpower, so they can share manpower between the schools. You know, if one is short this week, they can probably grab from another site that may be not as needed because they have shared resources. They also have the big contract with the in Camp Blas. So that's good that you have one big company that's awarded with that. But this is again the greater need. So this is the higher tier. What is the next tier between $6 and $20 million as you move down the next level of refurbishment? What is that cost estimate for the next tier?
What it means is, in essence, is how can we make the math work out versus what kinds of repairs and the level of the campus. Mm-hmm. In the process, I looked at those that needed the most work that we could fit into the money we had available.
Okay.
But I set aside, as I said too, $7 million for contingencies. In my experience with projects, this surprises happen. And although the bidder is assuring us that they don't use change orders, that they would stay within their bid, mm-hmm. I hope they do. That'll give me the capacity to add another school. And I rely on my maintenance folks to give me the rundown on which ones need the most work.
Okay. So outside of the 6, the ones with the greater need, outside of the 6, would the other schools, would the amount of refurbishment, would that be handled by your maintenance folks, or you still have to go out to bid on that as well? Or are those bidded out
for the
yet?
schools that are not in this group?
Yeah, not in this group. Yeah.
If I can add them.
Oh, to the existing contract.
Because the bid included all of the schools.
Oh, okay. So they're awarded basically all the schools, but these are the
right,
top
and then
tier.
It's broken out
okay.
dollar by dollar sets for each campus.
Okay.
So as we go into the project and those funds that are not being used, I can program those to another school.
Okay.
But because they're already bid, the contractor has already received the bid, and that will have already been vetted.
Okay.
In fact, it's being vetted now through the procurement and legal process.
So basically, the one contractor's got the bid for refurbishment for all of DOE
That's correct.
school system. Okay, got it. Okay, and that's good news again, because it's again they can share the manpower resources that they have. It's it's not a different contract for every different school, and we see that in again some of the projects that are happening outside of the fence, is that a smaller contractor again will start in a project, but then has probably a bigger contract, and then so the timeline for finishing the project is kind of delayed. But you have a contractor that has the manpower to be able to do as such. Chairman Barnett asked about, of course, mentioned the fact that the Lieutenant Governor had mentioned that he would use government-wide employees to help out DOE. I'm going to ask of you what I've asked of the previous superintendent. in regards to the needs, because the frustration that we have as well is that there's an extreme need for manpower and resources for the Department of Education. And I've written to the governor early on this year regarding proclaiming a state of emergency for the Department of Education so we can mobilize folks and resources to be able to get things done. She responded that it was out of her hands, that it was in the legislature's hands to be able to do that. So in working together, what state do you think we are in at this point? If this is in our hands, we need to proclaim a state that we're at, face the fact that this is where we're at, and work with the governor's office and say, this is where we're at. Are we in a state of emergency?
I would say yes. Now, the definition in that and what it constitutes and what capacities we can achieve by doing that kind of declaration, that's something I still need to understand working with you.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, is because, again, early on in the term, I asked for a proclamation of a state of emergency. The government says out of our hands, it's in the hands of the legislature. And now that you've told us this, okay, we are, Mr. Chairman, we are in a state of emergency. And so we need to definitely work with the administration to mobilize, as they promised, to mobilize all of Guam and the resources that are needed to be able to fix the schools. I would then, again, send a letter that we are ready in that state of emergency to come together with the governor's office, to work together, to find the resources and the manpower to give to you to get things done. But thank you very much for stating that and clarifying that. The previous superintendent was hesitant to do so. And hesitant, you know, I mean, looking at where we're at and stating where we're at, we have to face the fact we got to tell it like it is. And again, it's been frustrating from the very beginning. I know you folks are new, all of you are new, but we've been sitting here with different faces telling us, or not responding to not, maybe trying to be politically correct and not telling us really what is happening there. But thank you very much for the candidness, because it'll help us to move forward and better identify and look at what's happening. Because when we are called in to see the conditions of the schools as well, you know, how can this not be a state of emergency and not just, you know, every school, but school-wide? I'm glad to hear that GW gym has been completed, but that is one, and I asked you earlier, this is one of 199 that needs to be turned over and done.
Take your wins where you can find them.
Yeah, there we go.
Senator, I will agree that that yes, a state of emergency exists. The mechanics of repairing it, that's a much more challenging process. But it will take all of us working with the resources we have to be able to overcome it.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. If the state of emergency exists and the governor can attest to that, and we come to that conclusion of, well, that this is a state of emergency, there are a lot of things that we can circumvent to make sure that the resources, be it manpower or finances, to be able to get to that point. I mean, again, we can't sugarcoat something that is, you know, can no longer be sweetened, you know. So that being said, I'm glad Mr. Ken Paris is on board. I've worked with him years ago, in a previous life, actually, previous agency, but welcome on board. And also to the First Lady Joanne, welcome on board as well. And you got a good team, a new team, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get things done. Let me ask you one other thing, facilities and maintenance. I know that the DOE had requested, was it a facilities and maintenance supervisor or manager? What is that? And was, and it wasn't a positive thing? Well, can you tell me about that?
Yes, we have identified the vacancy that Mr. Palomo right now is the acting person that's in that position. Okay. We've identified a need, and advertised and interviewed an individual, so we have someone that we can select. The other challenge, though, that we're dealing with is budget restrictions, personnel costs, and the board is reluctant to approve that position because it doesn't materialize at the school level. So it doesn't provide additional hallway, teacher aides or teachers. So this is an effort to balance the work to meet the state laws or territorial laws about adequate education and live within our budget, because we're looking at, as Dr. Okada explained, the $18 million cliff
Sure.
when ARP stops.
Sure, and I
so
understand that.
That's the thought process in the board. This has not been an easy
Sure.
conversation.
And I understand that, and that's why, again, it's important that we all know what state we're in and to move forward, because, again, if we know and we can face the fact that we are in a state of emergency and a proclamation of that state that we're in is exactly that, state of emergency, we can work around those. We can look at, and the laws are in place. But when emergencies happen and urgent needs need to come in place, we can work around that based on the urgent need and the emergency need of that. And that's what I'm saying, absolutely. Yes, we definitely need teachers, but we're here, we've been, since our beginning of the term, facilities and maintenance has been an issue and a big issue. And as the chairman's been frustrated with the slow movement of whether it's procurement or personnel and all that, we need, again, to solidify the state we're in and work towards that. And if we are in this state of emergency, then we need to mobilize and get things done outside of the scope and maybe contrary, but not contrary to law, but work around that, because it's urgent and it is emergency. I mean, when emergency happens, red lights and sirens, overcome, have the priority over a flashing red light. So with that being said, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that, again, that we can come together with this, and now that we know that we're state that we're at, and let's ask the governor to proclaim that, and our proclamation as well with that, and moving forward, and give DOE, again, all the mechanisms, whether it be financially or and the authority to be able to get things done once and for all. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Senator Titleby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues, and most especially good morning to the panel here this morning, and all the staff that's supporting that's back there. Appreciate your time being here today. And I found out you were wearing pink, so I thought I'd wear pink to Mr. Swanson to, just to make you feel better, but still I'm going to ask you some tough questions.
Well, I was hoping.
Yeah, you're hoping. Right. Also, can I get the maintenance division head to come up to the table too as well? Thank you. Okay, so, I apologize, Mr. Chair, for being late, but I was listening on my way in and hearing all the projects that you have planned going. You did mention after the certain schools that were awarded, you have about $7 million excess after that for contingency. Can you tell me, do you happen to have those list of schools? I don't have a copy of it here that you actually and those list of schools that you mentioned.
Yes.
How much total is it? Has it been awarded to Cortec? Because it's obvious you also mentioned that Cortec won all the awards on the repairs. Do you have that written down? And for me, I don't like to see other schools. I just like to see what the project is today. It's been awarded.
You have it? Okay. Well,
You had a list of them that you were mentioning, right? The schools.
Yeah, I have the list that
You don't have a copy
I'm
of that with
I'm
this?
going to do some quick math in my head because I don't.
Right,
I
yeah.
don't have the
What's the total amount?
It would be 71 million.
With the contingency of $7 million? So about
Plus 7. So
plus
that-
7 with the
yeah,
contingent,
because
71. And how many schools again?
That's 6.
6 schools only at 71 million. Okay. And all that money is coming from the ESP? I mean, is
That's
it
ARP.
ARP funding?
All ARP funding.
ARP funding. Okay. What money are you using that the $20 million that we set aside then? What money are you using that for? And what is your balance? It was mentioned earlier by the chair, you know, that there was commingling going on by taking that money and putting it in an account where all the agencies were dipping their hands in it. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, by law, we set that $20 million for DOE. Now, whether they put it in whatever account there is, you guys have 20 million. So how much is left over and how much was used from that 20 million?
We have mold mitigation and the fencing for all the schools. That's about 14.6 million. And then the rest, supposedly, we haven't gotten the details. It's going to be used for the support that we got from the National Guard. We are negotiating to see that
So that's
funds
over
can be given
20.
to us.
Okay, so that's 14 million plus 7.
No, 7.
7 for the National Guard, 14 million for mitigation of mold is what you mentioned.
And fencing. And fencing of all the
and
perimeters
fencing,
of the
mold
school.
and fencing, that's over $20 million. And so where's the remaining, what are you gonna, how are you gonna find the other million to cover that?
Oh, well, that's what we're working with BBMR, or
So
not to exceed.
have
20.
you put out a bid for that on the mold mitigation yet? Have you already paid the National Guard? What's the status of this financially?
The money sits with BBMR.
Sits with BMR.
Right, and there will be an advertisement coming out this week for mold mitigation and the
Still
fencing.
has not gone. Why the delay, Mr. Superintendent, on this mold mitigation? We passed this law, you know, how many sessions ago? Why is it so late?
We've been working with DLAN on it and GSA, and they've, you know, we keep pushing every day. So we've been assured that it's going to come out this week.
You know,
Maybe
once
later
upon a
next
time,
week.
the PDN had this, they put out in the article, you know, every day they would mention, you know, they would do a countdown on how long it was taking certain agencies to do something, a countdown. And it really looked bad, you know, but it actually put fire under the feet of that agency to get, you know, this stuff done. And I'd hate for, you know, the media to start doing a countdown on mold mitigation. We have that issue with the hospital. And we shouldn't be having this issue at the schools, you know, it taking this long. I know you have a lot on your plate, but okay, so the status is it has not been awarded yet. You're still in negotiations. The 20 million has not been touched by DOE whatsoever. And you're over the 20 million by $1 million.
Well, I'm
that
not
the
sure we're
status?
really over. I'm not sure we're really over, but I know that $20 million is the number that we're working with.
Ma'am, Senator Tydewey, if I could just clarify the
Sure.
information that was presented earlier was that of the $20 million, there's a $14 million balance left, and they're saying that that's going to be enough to cover, allegedly, the mold mitigation and the perimeter fencing at the schools. And the reason why we're $6 million short is because, according to the superintendent, that went to pay the National Guard,
Right.
because the National Guard picked up debris at almost all of the schools. I think there was one or
so
two that.
So it's 6 million, not 7 million. I heard 7 million from
Like
the
6 point
National Guard.
something.
Okay, so that put it over. And $1 million is a lot of money.
No, well, the
So you're
7
saying-
million,
Yeah,
Madam Senator, the 7 million is actually from the refurbishment funds that we have. That's what,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
ARP
our
funding. It's a different pot
It's
of
a
money
different-
completely.
different pot of money. Okay, see, this is why it's so confusing. If you put your, you know, math together on a simple spreadsheet, we can follow the money, find out where you're taking what money from, you know, what account you're taking it from. Then it makes it easier for us to understand what money you're using and where you're falling short. So if we can get the schools, the cost, the mold, that cost, and then the status report on that, that would be very helpful for us. For me, I follow the money. I mean, that's telling for everything. It also tells you how long it's going to take, because you still have to get a quote on how much, you know, the cost or win the bid for it. So it kind of gives us a gauge So we won't be hounding you so much knowing it's going to take another 2 months, and we'll just wait for that. But if it's delayed anymore, then we really come hard on you. The third-party fiduciary savings, we no longer have the third-party fiduciary, correct? That's already been out? Okay, what are you doing with the one, it's about $1 million a year that we spend on a third party? Is that the cost?
That was the
Yeah.
cost at the end of the contract.
What do you
yes.
plan on doing with that additional $1 million?
That'll remain in our general fund, and we'll use that to continue to operate, pay our bills.
Okay, so operations, you
Yeah.
plan to put in the operations. So for the maintenance division, how many people do you have under your maintenance division?
Currently, we have 45,
Under maintenance?
correct?
Okay, what is the ideal amount is that the ideal amount? 45 is pretty good compared to what I heard a
When
while
I
back.
first joined the department back in 2013,
Yeah,
we had roughly 80 to 90 personnel. Now we're at 45.
so what's the plan? Is that enough, 45 enough to cover all the schools?
No,
Okay, so the next question is, how much money has been set aside for your division to maintain the current schools? I understand we're doing renovations for other schools, but there are schools that are being operated right now for children to be in. And the problem is, and there's always been the government of Guam's problem, is we never set aside for maintenance, funding for maintenance on a daily basis. On a daily basis. How much is your agency given on a daily basis to make sure that, if something breaks, someone's there to fix it right away? If a new awning is needed, someone's there to fix it. How much funding are you given for that?
I can't give you that number right now.
Are you given any funding?
I'm not sure, ma'am. I have to get back to you on that.
As the head of maintenance, sir, I think you should know these answers. I really do. And if you don't, then, Mr. Superintendent, please, you need to let your staff know what's going on so they know what they have to work with, because if they don't know what they have to work with, they don't know what to ask for and what they have. So that needs to be done. Your audit report, have you done your audit report yet? Has that been put together?
That's a work in progress at the moment.
When is it expected to be done?
I think next month with
Next month? I
Frank.
hope so.
With Frank, I have to verify with our auditor, okay?
Yeah, because we got a bill that's coming out that's going to fine the head of agencies if they don't have their audits in time. So I'm giving you a heads up right now. The bill hasn't had a public hearing, but it will take money out of your personal pocket.
We're actually meeting with the auditor on Friday.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. The ADA compliance and the playground compliance from public health, you talked about, all this funding, 71 million that's going to cover these. Does that include the requirements for ADA compliance and especially the public health that passed? We passed legislation on their requirement for safety on playgrounds, which we had Joe Sanchez here testifying how much money that's going to cost. Is that included in your repairs for the school?
The repairs in the projects, yes, that includes ADA compliance.
And the playground from public health's requirement?
Does not include playground replacement.
Okay, that is by law, so you need to look into that and put money aside for that, because it is by law. It's to me, it was overreaching. If you ask me, I didn't particularly care for it. Safety, cameras up in the school. Is there any issue why you can't have cameras up in the school, like in the hallways, to monitor students and stuff? Are there already cameras there?
There are on some campuses, but they're not reliable. So
Why are they not reliable?
I have no idea why they've not been put in. And that's a project that I'm taking on because we need to have a better surveillance and security over our entire system.
When do you plan on looking into it?
I'm looking at two steps to this. First of all, the camera system. On two of the campuses, there were some issues where we tried to put them in, and because they were wireless, they were not working with our network. But overall, that hasn't been addressed in the system. I've got to get it costed out. Then I want to also consider a security service for off-duty hours so that we can monitor the facilities. Several are broken into frequently.
Yep, yep. And may I recommend, Mrs. Camacho, that you also look at BSP for funding for these cameras, and why the broadband scenario, because there is money, about $150 million that you can go after grant money so that these cameras will go on. And of course, maintenance department is going to have to probably, ensure that they're given the training needed to fix these cameras. It's not just putting a camera up and that's the end of the deal. No, it's maintaining them and making sure they're working correctly and actually having someone to monitor it. What are you doing about the schools that are not completely utilizing its population? It's like underpopulated, and of course some are overpopulated. What are you doing with those particular schools?
We're just, starting in January, we're going to go through that process of looking to identify facilities that are underutilized and get in the process of
Having a plan?
determining rezoning and closing probably 2 or 3 campuses.
Okay, so I'll try and stay on course here. Okay, so we talked about the maintenance, incorporating that. I mean, okay, got that. With regards to maintenance, who's doing the mowing of the schools?
There's 2 contractors.
Yeah, how much is that? Are there all the schools? 2 contractors for all the schools?
Correct.
Okay, how much is that a year?
I don't have the numbers with me right now, ma'am.
Okay, are they doing a good job getting it done?
Yeah,
You're monitoring them?
So far.
Okay, that sounds good. That's good news. Third-party audit report. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm looking forward to that report on the current, schools that you just mentioned. That 71 million. Where that money is coming from? What pot of funds it's coming, and especially on the 20 million that we provided for you. That's it for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Teitigui. Senator Paris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the panel. I just have a couple questions. So in regards to choosing the schools that are going to be prioritized as far as refurbishment, was the rationale to ensure they pass inspection, or is it more about efficient use of funds? For instance, the scope of work that was done prior, there was a talk about having to do the roofing first before electrical, because obviously, for obvious reasons. Can you just explain the rationale behind that?
Is that on the development of the scope of work? I wasn't clear on the question.
Yeah, so I remember in the previous oversights, there was talk about the scope of work that was done by GPA. And I asked the question, so what is the path forward? Are they going to prioritize which projects first? And so the idea was that they were going to prioritize roofing repairs before electrical work is done. And so I just wanted to, understand more the rationale behind picking these 7 schools. What was the rationale for choosing these 7 schools?
The rationale for first of all, understanding that all 40 campuses are in similar need, and the areas of work that was going to be accomplished in the project were the same for all the schools, with the exception of a couple that did not need canopies because they'd already been done. So we looked at the schools that were that serve the most students that are most likely going to stay open, and then just determine within the cost limits that we have which ones we could do. The contractor has the scope to do all 5 of the areas. So the sequence that he works is something that we need to work out with the principal and the contractor before they actually start work. But they will, the contractor, Cortec in this case, will do all of the process. The sequence that they do the work is going to be determined by them.
Okay. And so was this seen as the most efficient use of the funds?
I believe so at the state we're in, and the other part of it is that we have to remain cognizant that there is a time limit on the availability of those funds, and we need to be able to not leave any money on the table.
Okay, yeah, because my concern too is that, with the school year coming up for the next school year, we still need to make sure these schools meet the sanitary requirements. I know funding is a limiting factor, right? And that's the other question I'm going to have shortly. Funding is a limiting factor, but I'm just thinking, did we maximize the funding in these procurements? And I just want to,
I believe so.
okay. The other way to ask this question is, could we have gotten more schools to get to the sanitary, passing the sanitary permits with the same amount of funding? And the way to think about this is that there was, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 schools, right? And, we know the tier 3 schools required the capital improvement infrastructure in place. So I was thinking the way to maximize it is you go for the, when you're procuring this, you go for the hardest ones, but then you can fill in the gaps with other agencies pulling for you guys, or even the community, because, as we're sitting here talking about this, I feel like is there some way we can engage the community to help out? And, that could be the tier 1 schools. The tier 1 schools and tier 2, we bring the community in, they can help out, but the tier 3 is where we can maximize these dollars. Is that similar to what you were thinking in this process?
Yeah, yes, because the tier 1 schools, for the most part, that work has been done either by our staff or by the school community themselves, or in a combination of the two. The ones that we're targeting with the appropriated funds are the more expensive ones.
Okay. And then I see here that there's 14 schools that have passed. So have all tier 1 schools passed? Yes.
All the tier 1?
I see Ned heads
Yes.
nodding. Okay. And so the tier 2...
We're in the tier 2 range now.
Okay. And are you confident that they will pass before the end of this year? Are they being inspected, first of all? Are they scheduled for inspection?
All the schools are in line for an inspection between now and July.
Okay. And thinking ahead, right? So we know a lot of these schools passed with a C, which is barely above the passing rate. Are we confident going into the next school year that they will continue to pass?
The objective is to see to that they continue to pass at a higher level than they have this time.
Yeah, because the other thing is, when rainy season hits, that's when you see all the cracks and the water leaks, and then all these ceiling tiles start to go, and that's part of the sanitary permit. But my hope is that a lot of the roofing repair can be done. That would definitely assist with a lot of the sanitary issues that we're seeing in schools, and of course the bathrooms. Is all the roofing going to be repaired? Or how much of the roofing will be repaired that is known to be need of repair with the $70 million? It's just these 7 schools.
Just to say, when the area of work, you want to describe that?
Nick Cruz, CIP. So for the roofing repairs, it's only the 7 schools that Dr. Swanson noted. However, at the same time, the facilities and maintenance crew are actively working on repairing cracks as needed, especially in the cafeteria areas where there's Butlerton. But these are just kind of Band-Aid fixes until we can get a contractor, a structural engineer to kind of do the drawings on what exactly needs to be needed for the work, for the long-term repair of, for instance, the cafeterias.
So how many schools are known to need roof repair of the total schools?
To be honest, all of them.
All of them?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's really critical. Yes, did you want to comment?
Yeah, ma'am. Because I'm new at the DOE, a lot of our schools are very old. They're 40, 50 years old, older than me. I mean, basically, it's like our house. I mean, even a new house that's built maybe 20 years ago, it has issues. So we're addressing those issues with the schools. I mean, every day they call for certain things, a toilet or a sink or a door, So we're trying to deal with those issues on a daily basis and using whatever funds we have to fix them.
Okay. All right, thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to respond? Mr. Perez? I think you were, no?
Yeah, so the schools are old. I'm new, and we're actually trying to work with our maintenance staff as well as to get our people in there. I know that we're looking for that extra help that we need, but overall we're working on it. And especially we should do the roof before we do the electrical because it's just gonna mess the whole electrical out. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Nick?
If I could just add value to Ms. Camacho's response. So a lot of the issues that we see are the sewer lines, right? Because the schools are so old, the sewer lines are cast iron, and over time they kind of just rust out and dilapidate. So, I mean, at the time when these buildings were constructed, of course they passed their building inspection. This first runaround of public health inspections, we're kind of just getting into the swing of things, figuring out what needs to be done. I believe by next year, the principals and especially our staff kind of know what to expect and just continue to move forward. So I know we're barely passing with the C. Hopefully next year we can get a B and then continue moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And that leads me to my next question as far as funding. So I know, we're looking on our end for funding, but are there federal grants that GDOE has looked at that can help with this process? Because, GDOE is not the only jurisdictions that having issues. I think it's nationwide. There's issues with facilities. But do you see funding and are you applying for that?
Yes, we are. In fact, we have the hazard mitigation grant that we're working with DLAN on being able to fix at least the 15 schools that are used for shelters. And we're doing everything we can to help maintain and get our schools repaired.
Have you spoken to GWA? Because I think they're in control of the infrastructure. So has there been any talks with them regarding the sewer lines?
So GWA did help us with the collapsed sewer line at Jose Rios. We are looking at it's kind of a new technology. It's called CIPP, cured in place pipe. So this is just a trenchless system. What they do is they drop down into the manhole and then they shoot, is it epoxy? Epoxy through the sewer line, coating the cast iron. There are a few contractors on the island that do this kind of work, and hopefully if we're able to get funding, we can actually just try and use this technology to coat our sewer lines. Another grant opportunity that we're in the works with is Siemens, and John had a meeting with them Friday. I don't know if you want to kind of elaborate on it.
All right, the repair with Siemens and GPA. So this is a DOI funding, a DOI grant. It's for lights in our schools. Material should drop mid-January. They should start work on Southern Heights parking lot. That'll be changed all to LED. Tumuning Elementary, already half their campus is LED lights, so they're gonna put in the other half. And then Orta Chalampagu, they'll have LED lights with a solar panel and a battery bank. That's what's coming through the pipe.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, keep them coming in. Hopefully we can get more funds. Regarding the air condition, so one of the problems that we've had in the past is that I heard, I don't know if it's true, but that the maintenance people, they invalidate the I guess, repair. So basically what it is the maintenance covered with the purchase of the air conditions? Because my fear is that if we bring in a new, maintenance person, they invalidate the contract because they're not affiliated with the manufacturer. How is that procurement for the air conditions?
So basically the first year is installation of units. Year 2 to year 5, that would be the preventive maintenance of all the units that the contractor has installed. It's going to be split, so each unit, hopefully the contractor is able to keep up, is supposed to have preventive maintenance every 6 months. Currently, we finished 5 schools. 213 AC units have been installed. The contractor does have a warehouse full of mini split units. However, we are waiting for the larger package units to come in. He has 8 technicians. Because this bid is split into 4 regions, he has 2 technicians in each region and of course a handful of helpers to do the heavy lifting.
Okay,
yeah.
so we're not we're not jeopardizing the warranty because the maintenance is being done by those that are installing it? So,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
Okay,
There
that was my
a-
question.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was, but I'm glad for that
Yeah,
additional
there is a
information.
manufacturer warranty, or well, first it's the company warranty, and then the manufacturer warranty. But they are supposed to maintain the life of the unit for 5 years.
Okay, good. As far as leaseback schools, what's the update? I know there was some discussion in regards to what was their responsibility versus GDOE's responsibility. Can you provide any kind of brief on that? The leaseback schools. So we pay maintenance, a premium dollar for maintenance of those schools. And some of these schools are out of compliance, if not, I don't know what percentage of them, but so there was some issue regarding what is GDOE's responsibility versus the leaseback school's responsibility and one of the previous oversights. So is there any updates on that?
Okay, the GEF school, from the typhoon, they were not insured. So we had to have them put part of our FEMA projects. And we haven't gotten confirmation that they will be part of the FEMA projects. They're working with the governor's office because the lease is with the governor's office to see about giving them funding to be able to get the schools repaired. And we're also working with them to also figure out how to get the schools reopened.
Correct, right. Okay, so is it pretty clear what responsibility they have? Because we do pay them premium dollar for maintenance. Our expectation is that they should have been able to pass the sanitary inspections.
Well, there were roof damages too, especially Attica, and a lot of the ceiling tiles were also damaged. So in most of the schools, the GEF schools.
Okay, yeah, I guess maybe if you can provide a brief to the oversight chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Paris.
you to
Yeah, and
the
I believe
panel.
we did kind of cover that briefly in the last oversight hearing, and so basically there's, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no responsibility on the part of the landlords or leaseholders to repair the typhoon damages. That's something we're going to have to eat.
That is yet to be seen. This is an ongoing struggle. We are in the position of living in a house that somebody else owns. And all I can say is that in going forward, if we use a leaseback agreement again, there needs to be a provision that the leaseholder provide insurance for. Because even with FEMA, if they've repaired the schools once and we get another major typhoon, they won't cover it again unless you have insurance. So that, looking at the pending Simon Sanchez project, I would hope that the folks that are building that lease and make sure that the language includes the reality that they have to have insurance for storm damage. Because the GEF group had a contingency fund established, but it wasn't near large enough. They had about $2.2 million that they have put in and spent in terms of repairs, and that's about the same amount short of what it's going to take to get them all going. Now, League One Elementary, between the work that the GEF group has done and the community support, they're going to be able to go back in their school on the 2nd of January. So that one's going to reopen.
Estumbo, you said? League One, okay.
League One Elementary.
And then, so what's the, forgive me if I missed it, what's the status on Attica Elementary, Estumbo Middle School?
Attica and Estumbo Middle School, we're still in the process of trying to find if we can fund the repair to get it done and then be reimbursed. And I don't have an answer on that.
Okay. What about Timoning Elementary? Are they going back to full regular school schedule after Christmas break?
Actually, they're back. To Money Elementary, they're back.
Okay. Soup, so you had said in your, when Senator Perez was asking you about the prioritization of the different refurbishment contracts, you had said it was a combination of student populations and which schools serve the biggest needs. So why wasn't Finnegodzin included on this list? Because I was just up there for the Christmas program, and they got plenty issues with their covered walkways and other problems. So is that something that facilities and maintenance is going to be able to handle?
For Agata Johnston?
Finnegodzin Elementary. I believe it's the largest elementary school on the island, and it was very frustrating to be up there Friday and to listen to the staff and the teachers talk about the challenges that they face, not only with the walkways that aren't covered, but with the obvious issues with the air conditioners, which we're going to get into in just a minute. So again, what you said on the record here that you had factored in different things like student populations and the need of the individual schools relative to them being included on the refurbishment contract. So could you just explain why we didn't include Finnegodzin Elementary?
It's in the same, it's not the only school that's got that level of concern. In terms of the cost that's projected for that, and I don't have the number in front of me, but that particular project pushes out of our range that we have. And that one and one of the high schools, $20 million for one project is, when you look at the total amount of funds available, I'm trying to get the most number of schools done that I possibly can. And, hopefully we can not have to use contingency funds and we can program that school for that repair. One of the things that we're restricted on in the contract is we can't pick which services. Because there are 5 different areas: canopies, electrical, restrooms, roofs. We don't have the latitude in the contract legally. What legal has advised us is we can't pick the service that we need. For example, if I say, you know what, let's not do 2 or 3 different parts of that and just do canopies and restrooms. I'm not allowed to do that. I have to do school by school, the whole, whatever was bid by that school. So that's a restriction that I would rather not have, but that's what's there.
So that being said, Mr. Palomar, is your division going to be able to handle any of the repairs that need to be done at Finnegodzin?
Yeah, we can handle it. It's just going to take us a long time. It's going to take us a lengthy amount of time to do it.
What are the barriers, sir? Because I know we have the contract, but then you had said that you guys are kind of filling in the gaps. So what are the barriers that your division is being presented with that maybe we can assist?
Well, first and foremost, manpower. I need manpower and I need skilled labor. So the skilled labor is the really hard thing to get. We had twos, like electrician 2. I'll give you an example. Electrician 2, we had that out for a year. Only several people decided to apply. Earlier, I brought it down to electrician 1, and then I had 3 people apply. So the plan moving forward to get our people to get them where they need to be is going to take me a while, but it's going to take, we'll get there. So it's hiring like maintenance workers. You're under the purview of electrician 1, electrician 2, and once you're getting to the skill level where you can be a 1, then we'll promote you to there. And that's what I'm looking forward to now, because we don't have too many skilled workers, but we do have laborers or semi-skilled, and then we can bring them up to where we can have them. But I'm thinking it's going to be like about 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
We had Department of Labor Director David De La Sola across the hall in a session. It was Committee of the Whole, and I'd asked him specifically about what type of assistance the Department of Labor, through their displaced worker program, had provided to the Guam Department of Education. And Mr. De La Sola had informed me that they had provided several skilled workers, but then in talking to you at Marshall Sablon, this is not exactly the case. Can you just describe the type of assistance that you received from DOL?
They are workers, however, they're not skilled. So they don't have carpentry skills per se, but they do have a little bit of hands-on, so we're just using them as laborers pretty much.
You have, would you agree that you have no shortage of laborers, but obviously you need the skilled?
Correct.
And this is very frustrating because the former acting superintendent, Dr. Judy Wampat, actually given us a bill which we passed into law, and this bill would allow the Guam Department of Education to hire back retired facilities and maintenance personnel. And so in talking to you, I think you had said there was like 1 or 2 people who had maybe applied. So what is the issue there? Because we were told by the former acting superintendent that this was a silver bullet, that if we pass this, that you guys would, we'd see all these retirees come back and, we'd be good. So it's very frustrating to try to put together in my mind why we aren't good, when we did exactly what the leadership of GDOE at the time had asked us to do.
Well, I only talked to one guy, one retiree so far when this was out, and I asked him if he would think about it. And the only thing he told me was, I'm happy where I'm at. And if they gave me the same pay when I left, then I'll come back. And that was the end of this.
So that's the issue, is you're having these former facilities and maintenance personnel who retired at maybe like a step 8 or whatever, and we're asking them to come back as a rookie and get paid like a rookie at step 1. So that's the problem. Okay. Okay, so the Aircon contract, I know that there was a work session that one of my staff was able to attend because we had a special session here, and so I'm seeing a little bit of a difference between the numbers that Mr. Nick had mentioned versus what was relayed in the work session for the GDOE board. So let me just ask, first of all, is there a manpower issue with the vendor that won the contract to provide air conditioning to all the schools across the district?
I'd say yes. Of course, we have the largest GovGuam agency, 2,600 units to be repaired. For us, we have high expectations, right? We want a technician at each and every one of these schools. Unfortunately, we're using what we have. Like I said, he has 8 technicians with 3 to 4 helpers. Right now, he is looking at hiring more technicians. He's currently in the Philippines, trying to get H2 workers. Not too sure how long that process will be. However, he's also trying to hire on-island people. He's talked to former technicians that have worked with him, but they're happy where they're at. So it is a struggle, right? I mean, if he's able to hire more technicians, more helpers, I believe that they'd be able to service 2 schools per region simultaneously. He does have a warehouse full of mini split units, right? But I mean, we're looking at him installing 2 to 3 units per region, right? So that's around 12 units a day. So he's slowly getting there. Hopefully, if he's able to up his manpower, and I've actually sent a memo to him last week, Monday, right? Documenting that, hey, you need to give us a game plan, right? Tell us exactly how you're going to up your manpower, because principals are complaining, right? We're not happy with the units that are, or the pace of the units
Right.
being installed, right? So I mean, we're working with him, and he's trying to help the department. He's trying to look for more technicians, and he's been very, very helpful. But of course, we have high expectations, and we want to keep, foot to the throat kind of thing.
Right. So again, according to and thank you for that, Mr. Cruz. I think it's very important, and this is something that we have not really seen, at least in my short tenure here as oversight of the Guam Department of Education, is we have not seen the GDOE hold vendors accountable. And so I'm not sure where the disconnect is, but when you put out a big project like this, I would just assume that the company that wins it can do the job and not put us in a situation where we have, what I've heard, GDOE staff assisting in installation of air cons. I mean, that's what the vendor's getting paid for. So again, according to the contract, it says that here, 25% of the schools need to be completed per quarter. This means we should be at 25% by the end of December, but we're currently, again, according to the work session, not even at 10%.
Sir, the contract started mid-October, and we are on him. I'm holding the vendor accountable. I'm bringing him in as often as possible, and we've written him a letter and sending him, you need to live up to our expectations and our demands and our needs. So that's probably why he's in the Philippines trying to get some laborers, but we are holding him accountable. And if I have to meet with him every other week, I will.
Yeah, but what do we do ahead of the awarding of the contract to make sure that we're hiring the right people? Because let me tell you, the end result of this is that we have kids in 90-degree classrooms. I mean, I was out at Marshall Sablon, and these kindergartners, first graders, they have to walk outside, every hour because they're sitting there trying to get their adequate education in a 90-degree classroom. Meanwhile, come to find out that we have awarded a vendor, potentially millions and millions of dollars, and they can't even do the job.
Well, there was a shortage after Marawar of air conditionings, and he did say that he contacted his source and tried to bring in as many air conditioners as he can up front, but overall, there is a shortage. So he's doing what he can. I'm even asking him to give us a list of what he has and when would the next shipment be. So there was. And there was only 2 bidders, I believe, for the air conditioning contract.
So right now I only have mini split units, right? Marshall Sablon, like you said, is it the splitted, right? Split. Right, so it's not the split units, they're more of a package unit, right? So what we are looking at is actually converting, because he has over 200 mini split units, right? We are looking at converting these classrooms into split units, right? I know Marshall Sablon is hurting and a bunch of the other schools are hurting. Asumbo Elementary, for example, right? They were first on the list, however, they are in the same condition as Marshall Sablon package units, right? Unfortunately, Asumbo Elementary is up next for inspection, right? So if getting these AC units installed, converting them to mini split units is going to help them pass inspection, then that's something that, of course, I'm going to have to talk to Ms. Camacho about and see how we're able to convert.
But I think that's part of the problem is that we came out with a list, we came out with our set priorities, and then because the vendor, it sounds like, is not able to meet that demand, now we're departing from the list, and then I'm getting calls every day. Hey, we're on the list, we're supposed to be third, where are they? They came and then they left, or they put in half an aircon and then they split and they haven't been back. So it's a lot of it is the messaging and getting the right information out to the stakeholders. If we communicated these changes to the principals and the staff, or just the department in a general sense, then we wouldn't have this this confusion and frustration. And I mean, it is what it is. It's bad news. People are better able to deal with it if they just know. But when you guys put out a plan and then you depart from it because the vendor, for whatever reason, wasn't vetted beforehand, we end up with this situation now where, I just want to flip the table up here.
It's very
we
hard.
were told earlier this year that the air cons would be done by July. That we would start seeing air cons being installed by July. So what are we doing to ensure that this vendor is out there, that we're putting in the air cons, that we have the inventory? Because it just sounds like we're already not going to meet the stipulations of the contract by the end of this month.
So the contract
Is there a
was
penalty?
The contract was awarded in October.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where the July.
Well, that's because there was a protest, and so we had Deputy Superintendent Sanchez in here, and that's when he said that, ma'am, with all due respect.
Okay. So we started in October, and we're on the vendor. We even have our GPA guy out there verifying what's being installed and the quality of work that's being done. And we are on the vendor. Okay, so we'll continue to do that. Obviously, he couldn't install 2,600 air conditioners all at one time.
No one is asking him to do that. ma'am.
But we are on it.
What I don't like to see is when our kids are trying to learn in 90-degree classrooms and you guys are all up here apologizing for a vendor who couldn't even show up today. That's what I don't want to see or hear.
But we are communicating and trying to work with him, as you know, regularly. I mean, every week I'm asking for a report to exactly how many units are installed, and or even now when we have to convert, I'm getting the cost difference because if it's cheaper, not that we want it to be cheaper, I'm going to make sure that we get billed correctly, and we'll continue to put pressure on. The 5-ton units and 10-ton units are really hard to get. I mean, a lot of the local suppliers also don't have it. Because that would be my next thing, then go get the supply from somebody else, and I don't care, you know, what it is, because we need the stuff. And I understand the kids are hot, but, you know, different schools will call you on different days, and, you know, trying to mediate this. If I had a magic wand, they'll all be, I'm not complaining, but unfortunately, we're dealing with reality, the shortage of air conditioners, we're working with the vendor, and I'll continue to put pressure on the guy to give us a service that we so deserve.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we get to Head Start, I just want to ask specifically about Agata Johnston and Ocean View Middle School. So these are the two schools in which parents are suing the department for what they allege are violations. I mean, they're pretty factual. Violations of the Adequate Education Act. So I know we've had you in here a bunch of different times to talk about why those schools, or if they were, in fact, prioritized for repairs. So what's the status with these specific schools?
Both of those schools are included in the refurbishment contract, and in addition, Mr. Palomo has a crew down there working on things that are not covered on that contract.
All right, so for Agata, they're doing the. Let me go back to the beginning. So, I believe Ocean View was one of the first schools moved up for inspection, public health, if I'm not mistaken, because I know I was there. We did some pretty good work over at Ocean View Middle School with, because of the public health. Inspection, and they did inspect, however, they didn't complete. From there, we left, and then we got a better understanding of what other schools, what needs to get done. We have never sent anybody to Agata, but up until the time that we did. So Agata wasn't checked, but they are now. So there's a team there to address all their. They removed all the ceiling tiles inside their entire cafeteria, the entire quad, and that's all I know. So I have got my guys going in there to replace and also do the plexiglass to try and get them ready for public health inspection, or to address whatever situations that they have with Agata. Ocean View, we're going to go back to them once the guys are done with Agata. They'll be there at Ocean View. But however, I know that the refurbishment contracts coming in. So majority of what the refurbishment contract takes care of is what you see. But what you don't see is the inside of the classroom, and that's where we come into play.
Yeah, it's just frustrating because I know that we had a report of a sink falling on a student's foot. I think that was earlier this year. I actually met with the family, and the girl suffered a fracture on her foot. And then I got a picture few weeks ago about another sink at Agata that had was in danger of falling, and I think the staff there had placed it down on the ground, so we avoid that type of situation. But my first thought was, damn it, we're being sued specifically for instances at this school, and we still have the same thing happening where you got sinks that are in danger of falling on the students. So it's good to hear that your team is there and working on those issues. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Palomo. All right, if you guys have any questions on any of the AC contracts, we'll move right into the Head Start status of the quality implementation plan. Hi, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. So I did submit the written update about what's been happening.
Can you just identify yourself for the record?
Oh, sorry. Angelina LePay, I'm the acting Head Start Program Director, Social Services Supervisor at Head Start.
Okay.
So we did have 5 areas that were identified by the Federal Review, which we have been working steadily on. So just to kind of summarize and tell you where we're at right now, one of our area of deficiency was active supervision. The feds have visited us at least 2 or 3 times. They meet with us monthly via Zoom, and they have been guiding us on next steps and things that we may not consider, but we want to have in place so that we pass by March. So with active supervision, we have been doing a lot of training. We've come up with different procedures to enhance what they're doing in the classroom. We have a professional development coming up in January to further strengthen the skills of the staff, and we're training all staff, not just teaching staff, because when our teaching staff call out sick, our central office staff are the substitutes. And whenever we go into the classroom for whatever reason, all staff should be aware of what needs to be done to ensure active supervision. One of the physical things that we're doing to ensure that is the installation of fencing. So you mentioned earlier about the perimeter fencing at the school. That is not sufficient for active supervision, and we know we're talking about preschool kids here. So one of the things that my friends next to me have assisted with is the scope of work for fencing. The entrance and exit doors of all of our centers will have what we call redundant safety measures. So kind of like when you go to a daycare and you see there's a fencing right outside the door. And that's just so that if for some reason, we know they're little kids, that door opens, they can't go anymore. Shouldn't happen, but that's why it's called a redundant safety measure, so in case things happen. And then the other aspect was when we go outside to the playgrounds, we want to make sure that we are able to have all of those kids within sight and sound of the staff who are there, which is why we're doing the playground fencing. And that's within the required space of 1,500 minimum playground space for the children. The other area of noncompliance is ongoing monitoring. And so what they've said, and we've seen that and heard it today, right, is that these situations with our facilities should not have gotten to where they were. The situation with active supervision, if we were doing ongoing monitoring in the way that we should be in all aspects of the program. So not just, we need to be going into the classroom to make sure that our teaching staff have the skills they need, if they need a mentor, if there's additional children who are having behavior challenges, that we're identifying and offering the support that we need, that our facilities outside, our outdoor learning environments are being maintained and monitored on a regular basis. So we have expanded our monitoring process and pulled in designated staff in each content area to go out there. So let's say the area is health. So our LPN, our health coordinator, will go out to the centers monthly. They go in to see, is everything in place health-wise? If it's not, then they would go on the next steps, right? Instead of having one person going in there, monitoring all the centers in all areas, if it's your area, you know what needs to be done, and we can move further on it. So the system that we have in place for ongoing monitoring has been expanded with the guidance of our technical assistants. They have real minor tweaks as to like, okay, now that you do this, what's your next step? So they're guiding us on that closure of the process. I'm not concerned that we will not comply with that area by March. In fact, I think we're doing pretty well so far. Our next non-compliance area was facilities need to be free from pollutants, hazards, and toxins. And so that's where this whole thing with lead came in. Lead in the water, just to reiterate that we went in and we tested all of the Head Start centers and all of the cafeterias that service those centers. There were 2 schools identified, and Sodexo has taken it upon themselves to change the faucets in those cafeteria sinks at those schools. Those were the only ones that that tested positive. And so although Sodexo has said that they will test those sinks now, I don't want to wait for that. So it's within our control to procure someone to test. So that's what we're doing. If Sodexo does it, that's great, but we will make sure that those sinks are tested. And then moving on to lead in the paint, there are 2 sites that have not yet been tested for paint. And one of them was simply overlooked by our program director in July when we did an assessment of the age of the schools. That one is in procurement. And then there's a new classroom that was given to us by a principal. So some of our centers are morning, afternoon, and a principal at one of the sites had identified an extra classroom. So we converted that 2 centers from a morning, afternoon to just 2 morning sessions. So that classroom will be tested for paint. We did have 3 schools that were identified in the initial round in July as having lead in the paint. So we sent out a request for assessments of mitigation efforts. One company has come back with their written assessment. Their assessment, to summarize, basically says nothing needs to be done, that those sites are fine, and that we can continue to do, whatever it is we're doing, painting and things like that. But I am a mom, and I didn't think that we should trust the word of this one company. And so we did request for 3, so we're waiting for a second opinion. So if these people who are certified in this area tell us that everything is good and we have 2 different companies coming at us with that same information, then I feel we can trust that, right? But this is a concern for all of us. We want to just make sure that the state of whatever they're telling us is correct, and I'm trusting the experts, right? Also in the area of pollutants, hazards, and toxins is our restrooms at 2 of the schools that the Head Start children use. We have asked our friends here to do a scope of work for that so that we can get the restrooms at DL Perez and Marshall Sablon addressed. They are considered shared spaces with the schools, and so because of that, we're able to fund it through Head Start. The other areas that I had mentioned in my testimony were 3 schools where we identified that awning needed to be put in. So CL Titano, if you drive by the school, you'll see that the rear gate is kind of blocked off partially, and you can see part of the awning needs to be replaced. So we will address CL Titano, DL Perez, and PC Lujan, walkways that our Head Start children have to walk through to get to the classroom, because the state that it's in right now is hazardous for them. So they go around those areas, but we just want to make sure that when the feds come in March, there are no areas that present a risk to Head Start children passing through them. So once that scope of work is done, we will put that out as well. The next area of noncompliance is outdoor play areas that are kept safe. So that involves 2 different aspects. One is the fencing, which I spoke about. And when we install the fencing at those schools, every school will have a fenced area. We are including in them not only the walking gate for the children, but a utility gate, so that if when the playground needs to be addressed, that we don't have to take the fence down to do it. Some of the schools, we have gone out with Region 9, and they have told us that that playground apparatus looks safe. When we put out the request for, I'm not sure the verbiage for it, but when we ask the experts to come in and assess our playgrounds, they will do all the playgrounds and let us know if, in their expert opinion, that playground is safe. So for those ones, we might not need to replace it now, but in the future we might. So all of the playgrounds that are being fenced in will have a utility gate so that we can get in there without taking it down. With the specific playground apparatus, what the feds have told us is that as long as we can ensure a safe outdoor area that falls within the required square footage per child, that we will pass in that area. We don't necessarily need to have playground equipment installed, but we need to have a plan that, not just a plan, but action being done. So if we say that these schools will need to have a playground apparatus, we need to have started the procurement process. But as long as those kids are playing in a safe outdoor area, then we will pass in that area. So Nick and John have gone out with our maintenance guy. They've assessed an area that the feds agree would be appropriate. Of course, in some places, in some of our schools, this is an island. The ground is not completely level. So once that fence is installed, we will need to ensure that, we level it out. If we have to put dirt in or whatever it is, again, that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm trusting the people who we're working with. But we will make sure that there's no roots and no ditches that the kids can fall into, because when you run across the grass, it all looks even, and then all of a sudden you fall into a little dip, right? So those things will be addressed once the fences are put in. And then the final area of noncompliance was background checks. And so I know that we kind of alluded to this when I sat before the legislature about an oversight hearing for CPS. But with Head Start, we are required to have a comprehensive background check for all of our staff, consultants, and contractors. DOE does a great job of ensuring that anyone that's hired does the police and court clearances and all of the administrative clearances, including checking onto the child abuse registry, sexual offenders, all of that stuff. The one area that we were lacking is FBI background checks and state clearances with fingerprints. So we have connected with the Superior Court of Guam, which is the local agency that does those FBI clearances. Initially, we went straight to the FBI, and we were told that they don't do it. So now we're in the final. We do have an MOA in place with the court, but after reviewing it, there was a minor amendment that needed to be made. So we're just waiting for that to be finalized, which shouldn't take too much longer. We also have come up with a process, and we have tested that process and piloted it with 4 of our program staff on how we're going to get it done. So we go in, the marshals do our digital and ink fingerprints. They transmit it via live scan to the FBI, and within 24 hours, we get a clearance that says, yes or no, this person has passed. We tried it, it worked great, and so we are now scheduling the remainder of our Head Start program staff. They will be starting fingerprinting tomorrow. And we've scheduled 8 people per day. The marshal's office has said that they could do 4 per hour. So we have one set in the morning, one set in the afternoon, and based on our schedule, they will be done with all of our program staff by the first, maybe second week of January, just in case someone calls out sick. In addition to that, our EEO officer at DOE will be scheduling for any one-to-one aides that work directly with Head Start children with disabilities. We're connecting with our Chamorro program because now they are going to be servicing preschool children. And so we're going to have them tested. And our principals have, in our recent work session, a couple of them have asked that we be proactive and also have our administrators, our school principals, do the FBI clearance, and that would be as a backup in case someone calls out. They can assist in whatever way they can to support our schools and our classrooms. So that's what's next on that list for FBI background checks.
Thank you, Mrs. LePay. That's very informative. Let me just run down some of my questions. I guess my first question is, are we going to be able to do this all by March 5th,
Yes.
2024?
We are very confident that we will. FBI background checks, as I said, will be done by January. Even with the other people that we're adding on, the court has said that they'll do whatever they can with us to accommodate those being done. I'm
sorry, ma'am, to interrupt, but so that's ongoing?
Ongoing, yes.
Okay. So in the event that you submit an employee for clearance and they don't receive a clearance, you get the call from the FBI that says, oh, no, not this one. What's the process?
So we would follow the DOE process so I would have HR speak to that on what's the process that they follow to remove that person from contact with the children. Yeah.
And then I guess my other question, and I'll go backwards, relative to the background check, how did we get to this situation where we hired, everybody without the required background checks?
So Head Start is the only one who has that federal requirement. I can't speak as to why our former director didn't pursue that. I'm not really sure what happened. All I can say is that that is what the regs say, and that's what we're going to do now.
Can you, what's your status? Because you said the former director, and
Oh, well,
I've been hearing that she's retiring or, okay.
Yeah, she's retiring.
So you're the acting program director for
Yes.
Head Start from here on out? Or
Until
you're-
the department hires somebody.
Okay. All right. So areas of noncompliance, the outdoor play areas are kept safe. You had said that it's not necessarily an issue of us having to procure all the age and developmentally appropriate playground equipment, that we can submit a written plan that provides an alternative for safe outdoor play.
Yes.
That's been verified with
Well, when they were here, we spoke to them and said, what do we need to pass by March? Because we know that we're on an island, and procuring that playground apparatus, I don't know if it's going to go on a ship or what might happen. And so we asked them, what do we need? And so basically they said, we need to ensure that the outdoor areas that our children are playing in are safe and free from hazards, pollutants, and toxins. And so they said to us that as long as we have that fence in place and the area within that fence is free of all of those things, then we will pass with that regard for the outdoor play areas.
And is that a temporary mitigation, or would we still have to, let's say we get the fencing and we fill in all the potholes in the yard, but we don't have the playground equipment, but we're procuring it, then we'd be okay with that
Yes.
area of
Yes.
noncompliance? Okay.
We have to show that we not only have the plan for the playground apparatus, but that we've started the procurement process, or the proof of we put it out to bid, or it's on the ship waiting to come, but it does not need to be installed. The playground, if we fence in an area that we say that apparatus is safe, then of course that apparatus needs to be able to pass.
I attended the exit briefing with the federal Head Start representatives. I want to say it was a couple weeks ago, and
Yes.
one of the things that they had talked about was that we have failed to spend the money. Yeah, whoa,
So-
go figure. Gov Guam failed to spend money. So yeah, we failed
So
to
I
spend the federal funds. So just for everyone watching at home, this is what I was able to learn. So Head Start gets a 5-year program budget, and for years 3 and 4, we have a total of $2.3 million, right?
Not quite, but your concept is right. So with
Right.
year 3, there was about 400,000 remaining. That has been approved for carryover, and that is now in our current year's budget, so we can use that. Year 4 is a $1.4 million remaining, and I have submitted that budget revision. It's been accepted by Office of Head Start, and it's going through the review process, so all the other signatures can come off on it. Once that is approved, then it will transfer into our current budget, and then we will have that money to be able to address the health and safety concerns. With Head Start, funding is not an issue because it is federally funded, and they have told us that as long as we expend the money that we carry over, and if we still need money when we do our playground assessments or these shared space projects, that we can apply for one-time program improvement funds, but not until we have shown that we have expended all of the money we've carried over.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me just go to the shared spaces. So DL Perez bathroom, there was in the monitoring report an instance where a student had fallen, I believe, under the sink and was injured?
No, the sink, so there's a sink in the classroom, and the front of the sink doesn't have a door, I guess. And so the child was somehow or other fell under there. Yeah.
Okay, so in speaking with Dr. Roberto, who's the principal of DLP, she had told me that one of the things that they needed to come into compliance were age-appropriate toilets, right? And so the toilets in the shared bathroom in which the regular DLP student population shares with the Head Start. These are the taller toilets, and so are we going to be able to, because I kind of called around a little bit just on my own to see if anybody had the foot-high toilets in inventory, and I didn't get a positive answer. So have you guys had luck with that, and are we going to be able to meet that by March 5th?
So I'm not sure what the island inventory is. Once we finish the scope of services, then we can kind of see what needs to be done, but I don't know what the island inventory is. I have not done that step yet.
Can I ask if we don't have the toilets, but we have procured them, and then we have some kind of alternate written plan, are we able to dodge that bullet?
I'll have to ask. So the bottom line is, what is the child using when they need the bathroom at that school, and is it safe and free from toxins and hazards? So if we identify something else, then that other bathroom, let's say, needs to be able to meet those requirements. At DL Perez, we do not have bathrooms within the classroom, so that's why they use that one. And if we identified another bathroom, not that one closest to the center, then the problem would be how are we ensuring active supervision in transitioning those children from the classroom to the bathroom, let's say in the other building. So we'd have to come up with other plans, but we'll see.
Well, keep me posted on that. Well, you'll be back here next month anyway. So what about the lead
Yes.
testing? So, I mean, if federal Head Start says that we have to mitigate the presence of lead and the results show the presence of lead, but then you're hearing from vendors that, oh no, we're good, I'm just worried that that's not going to be good enough for the feds.
What I have done is we have a program specialist assigned to Guam, Josh Jaggerman, and so I keep him in the loop. We have a call with him every month, and I've informed him that we did have one vendor come back and tell us that this is the results of their assessment and that we're trying to get a second opinion. So he's aware, and he did not say that, that we needed to do something else. So if these certified contractors give us their assessment that nothing needs to be done, then we have shown that we tested it and we followed through on the process and that the children are safe in that space.
Okay, and then I was, the active supervision. That's not necessarily an issue of hiring personnel, it's more implementing the protocols and the
Strategies.
procedures.
We do have vacancies, but that is not going to hinder the implementation of active supervision. We do have current vacancies for Head Start aides, but as I said, when we have somebody who's called out or there's no aide assigned for that center, then our central office staff substitute. So we always meet teacher-student ratio.
And in the report I was reading that basically these areas of non-compliance with active supervision were relative to Head Start students kind of wandering off on the campus, right? I think once was like 3 minutes and then another time was
so
a couple minutes.
anytime you don't have a child in your line in sight, then they are considered unsupervised. So one center, the door was not closed well, and so we do have door chimes. The door was not closed well by the person who came in, so it didn't have contact, and the child leaned on the door and was outside the door, and so that child is considered unsupervised, whether it's 1 minute or 3 minutes, which is why we have those fences and we have all these redundant safety measures we're putting in place. Another instance, I believe that the child did run down outside of the classroom, and then a staff walking in kind of stopped them, but still that child exited the classroom and was out of the teacher's line of sight. So all of those things we take very seriously.
That's good to hear. I mean, as a parent of young kids, I mean, they're hard to keep track of, and it's amazing how, I mean, in my mind, not necessarily the worst of infractions, right, but serious enough to put us this entire program on the chopping block. And I'm sure you know, Mrs. LePay, that this program benefits so many of our most vulnerable and our all of those people in the lower socioeconomic brackets, right? And
Right.
really just can't beg enough that you do take this seriously and that we work together. Because one of the issues for me, it was very frustrating to hear from the federal Head Start representatives, was when they said, and you guys all heard it, that if we just communicated with each other better, we might not be in this situation. And so I just ask that we talk to each other so that we know, the left hand knows what the right is doing. And it's embarrassing for the federals to come all the way over here and say, Lana, you guys can't even talk to each other. So,
Yeah. And it's the assumption that when new people come in, that the person who left had updated them. And that was one of the biggest things. But we are moving forward and ensuring that everyone is consulted along the way. I do want to say that at Head Start, we've been around for 58 years on island. I myself was a Head Start child. I want to say more than 50% of our staff are either Head Start children or parents or grandparents. And looking at our enrollment, we probably have about 75, if not more, 75% of our student population are those in greatest need. So they're foster kids, they're homeless, they're on public assistance. And so we know that our program is needed.
And I just want to address this, Superintendent, because I've asked you before. The obvious question I think everybody watching is thinking is, how do we end up in this situation where we now have until March 5th or we lose the entire program? And I'd asked you this before, and you said that there was no transition briefing that you had received when you came on board as the new superintendent?
And that's correct. And also, some of the documentation that came to the surface in this process was the first time I'd seen it. So it's already obvious we've got a leadership change. We're cleaning that problem up. And we will make the target on this process. I'm actually moving the Head Start work in front of the inspection work.
Thank you for that. Senator Lujan? Well, I'd also like to recognize Senator Roy Canata. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chair. Ms. LePay, you were saying that there was in the third and fourth year that the third year you have 400,000 unexpended?
Yes. Sorry. I didn't realize how close that was to me. So Head Start is a 5-year grant, and whatever money is remaining at the end of that particular year can be requested we have to revise the budget and request to carry it over to the current year. So yes, there was 400, a little bit more, but around 400,000 unexpended in year 3, which has been approved and is now part of our current year. We're in year 5 right now. So that money is already part of our current year budget. The one that is remaining is the year 4 budget revision, which is the 1.4 million. As I said, our program specialist has accepted and approved our budget revision request, but it has to go through the process of all the other signatures. He is on top of following through on that because that money is going to go towards addressing the health and safety concerns.
Okay, so it's not 2.3 then unexpended? I mean, from unencumbered?
No, it was 400. I mean, I don't have the exact number, but it's 400,000 for year 3 and 1.4 for year 4.
Okay, so that's 1.8.
So 1.8.
1.8
yeah.
then, or
it could be that when that was discussed earlier, that there was money that since then was encumbered. There is also an extra set of funds that is not part of that year 3 or 4, which is our 2 of our COVID grants, and that amount might have been what would add up to the 2.2 that you're talking about.
2.3, yeah.
Right. That money was identified for, this was a while ago, it was identified for Promethean boards in the classrooms, which has gone through. We're waiting on the purchase order to be issued for it. And then the remaining funds were supposed to go to fencing. That money, we had requested a extension back in, I believe that was in April. We requested an extension to use that money, and we were granted up until December 31st. So to finish that particular funding. Because we know that the fencing cannot be come to fruition within that time frame, as soon as it was brought to my attention, which was 2 weeks ago, we have shifted the focus. So with the remaining money in that pot, so that we don't lose it, we have focused it on the supplies that we would be purchasing in the spring, and instead that money will be used in the spring for the fencing. So we kind of like shifted it a little so we don't lose that money, but we still have the money put aside for to support fencing.
Okay, so you got the okay from Region 9 then?
Yes,
For that. So
Yes.
you're shifting, so you use up the money before the 31st,
So we don't lose it.
so you don't lose it, but then you'll still have the money, enough money for the fencing?
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, we believe that we will. Once the bid comes back, I mean, you know, you heard Dr. Swanson, we thought that it was going to be this much for repairing the schools, and it came back at this.
Yeah.
So at this time, we estimate that we will have enough. When the bids come in, we'll know, have a better sense of that. And as I mentioned earlier, if we do not have enough money in our anticipated budget, then we can request for program improvement funds.
Okay. Now, let me ask, and nothing against the superintendent here, but we hear in regards to the fencing that the superintendent, again, the director will have the final approval of the fencing. Do we not, I mean, just because of the bureaucracy that we all face, do we not listen then to the principals of the schools or where the fencings should be installed? And to cut down on the
Specific to
bureaucracy.
Head Start.
I'm sorry?
Specific to Head
Yeah,
Start.
yeah.
When we went out and did site visits, it was our maintenance worker, myself, or Miss Kathy, and the principal. So we walked the school together to ensure that the area that Region 9 identified as like, this is the best place for you guys to put your fence, that the principal was okay with it. And if they wanted us to move it somewhere else for whatever reason, that we did incorporate that and still ensure that we're meeting the requirements for the fencing.
Okay. No, again, I just want to cut down on the bureaucratic red tape that one has to go through, you know, to be able to get to the final approval for the superintendent.
Yeah.
And that, so maybe the on-site principal or whoever it may be can have the say.
Yes.
And, you know.
Yes,
you
sir,
know,
we did that when we
minus-
went out to make sure that everybody involved, all the stakeholders was there. So whatever we decided upon for the location of the fencing, that was it. And then our CIP and facilities was able to do the scope of work.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Senator Tydegui?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Angelica, right? Angelina, sorry. Gosh, I'm just, you know, I'm smiling ear to ear because I really like your report. And I especially like your report when you say we're not going to wait. You said that several times when it comes to checking the facilities to ensure that safety, especially on the lead, and going further on that. So I greatly appreciate all your hard work on that. You know,
Thank you.
love to hire you in my team on this one. But you're definitely needed where you're at right now. And I feel very confident about the program because of that, very well versed. I do have a question with regards to, is there a limit on how many Head Start students that DOE can,
Yes.
what is the amount?
So we are funded for 534 children.
Okay. How
We
many?
could increase that if we had local funds, but federal funds, we are funded for 534 children. We have 27 centers in 20 different schools.
Okay. Any chance that funding can increase so that you can include more?
Well,
Well,
so what happens is, let's say we pass in March and we turn in we're approved to submit for a non-competitive grant. So that means that we're guaranteed to get it. We just need to turn in all the paperwork and do the next 5 years. The only time that the amount can be increased is if Office of Head Start says there is available funds for expansion. So other than that, if there is available funds for expansion of our centers, we can apply for additional slots. If not, then we are only within the approved amount that we have of 534.
Okay, so a lot rides on the March deadline.
Yes, we need to make sure that we're still here.
Yeah, and a lot rides on it. That date is very, very important, so it'd be nice to have something in February, completed in February, so we have. What is is there a waiting list?
Yes, we do have a waiting list, but we also have, I want to say that as of today, we probably have about 30 vacancies. We are always registering to ensure that we have an active waiting list. Some of our challenges have been when there is a vacancy in that school, that there's no one within that district, and because we have to prioritize our selection criteria and ensure that we are serving those most in need, they often can't transport their kids out of district. Sometimes they can, and they will. We are also able to accept some children who are over the income guidelines if they have a disability certified by Division of Special Education. However, those particular, we do have a limit on the amount of over income we can put in. And so we don't have any of those slots open right now. In the schools where we do have vacancies, our staff have been doing outreaches. And as I said earlier, the vast majority of our children are foster, homeless, or under public assistance. So we do very focused efforts. I'm on the Guam Homeless Coalition, and I'm always reminding our providers that Head Start is, if your child is homeless, you're categorically eligible. You don't need to prove anything else. We just need a certification and get your child's immunizations and a physical, and they can come to school. Public assistance, we're working closely with our DOE Food and Nutrition Services because in the past, many, many moons ago, granted I've been with Head Start for over 25 years, in the past we would go directly to public health. They would give us a list of age-eligible families who are under public assistance, and we would send letters directly out to them and ask them to come in and register.
I love that proactive approach. That's a very good thing.
But public health will no longer give us that information because they already give it to DOE for the child nutrition programs. And so we are working with them to get that info so we can also reach out to them.
Very good, proactive approach. Then the anticipation that the superintendent was mentioning earlier about the DODEA, families coming in to the DOE system. We do know that the military has a missile defense system that they're planning to put in play and anticipating an additional 3,000 people coming to Guam on the military side and with their families. So it looks like it's going to grow. So if there's any opportunity for funding, because if they go into our school systems, I'm sure that even will take advantage of the Head Start program. Other than that, I like how I'm following the money when you were explaining everything and saying where it's coming from. So we definitely read the same type of structure on where things are at. The other one I had real quick was, last question. We received this DOE for the Head Start, Okay.
Yes, we get that every month from our budget.
Okay, and then I'm noticing here that revised budget section, it says training and technical assistance, and it seemed that the original appropriation was for 11,000, and it jumped up considerably under travel, that is. Well, it says FY22. No, I'm looking
That
at
might
the
be
wrong-
part of the carryover funds that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So anything that's within so we have a basic grant for program operations, and then we have a training and technical assistance grant. Those cannot cross. So even though we know that we would, in a perfect world, want to move all of that training money to program operations to fix the fences, it can only stay within that category.
Okay.
So we move it all around to within that category to ensure that our staff are, supported. One of the things that we were looking at is when the department does hire a new program director, that person will need a lot of training to come up to speed with whatever they need to do, as well as our content area experts. So oftentimes, if the training is offered virtually, we can do that, but most times it's not, which is why we shifted within that category, that grant, a lot of the money towards travel.
It's substantially large amount. I mean, first you appropriate in a small amount of 11,000, and then you go whopping to almost 70 grand.
Yeah, those are carryover funds from year 4 that were not used.
Right, and it's just that, why would you appropriate something that it's going to almost, triple?
Right.
So, being more realistic on your, whatever you appropriate is so important, because then red flags go up.
Right. With the training and technical assistance grant, that is an amount that's determined by Office of Head Start.
Okay.
So just like with our program operations, right? They determine based on our student population how much they're going to give us in that funding. I can't speak as to why we did not avail of that in year 4 instead of, carrying it over now.
Okay.
I don't know why it wasn't used.
Okay, good to stay close to that budget and be more realistic. And to the last question I have is, I noticed when you were talking about the playground requirements, that public health had brought up, and then you looked my way knowing that's that whole section, and that you're having somebody come in to assess. You mentioned, what the safety perspective of it.
Right.
So my recommendation is, if you have that group individuals coming in to assess, that you give them a copy of the rules and regulation that was recently passed by Public Health regarding playgrounds.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
And then that way they can give you a true assessment what's required by law. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Teidig. Senator Paris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to Ms. Lepe, and thank you for your report, very in-depth. So just additional questions that weren't asked before in regards to, or maybe just a clarification. I think you're doing really good with the background checks. It seems like you have a plan in place, and it seems like you're going to implement it in time. Maybe just a question about that. Consultants and contractors. Are you also going to proceed with the background checks on those? That group?
At this point in time, we don't have any consultants. The one that is built into our grant is a mental health consultant. We do not have a mental health consultant at this time, but it is in our procedures that should we have one, that person needs to be cleared. And so that's also some of the reasoning behind why we decided that the tomorrow teachers who are going to be servicing our classrooms and the one-to-one aides who have direct contact with our kids would need to have those background checks.
Okay, and this doesn't include like the school-wide contractors that are going to be doing the repairs. Okay, and I just want to maybe also provide some advice for the lead testing. Have you reached out to Guam EPA for consultation regarding that?
We reached out to them first. So when we were looking at the lead testing, we went directly to EPA. They were the ones who directed us to WERI. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but they said that they were the ones who would be doing the lead testing of the water. And then what I was thinking to do is once we get back the assessments from the other vendors that we had reached out to for the lead and the paint, is to then ask EPA, this is what we got, what do you think? I'm just not sure who the person is there yet. I haven't moved on to that part yet.
Yeah, so we did update the Safe Drinking Water Act, and
Okay.
so we did tighten up the restrictions for lead-free. There are products out there that are certified lead-free, and so maybe that's something that you can pass on to Sodexo, who I believe you said they're going to replace the faucets.
Yes, they have already.
Okay, and so maybe you could look at the certification that comes with the purchase of those products or those items. Okay, and I just want to also focus on the supervision, because that's really critical.
Yes.
And I'm looking at the quality improvement plan, and part of that is self-reflection and delivery of services to children and families. So can you attest that there is actually improvement from the processes that you've identified in this plan, has there been improvement since August?
Yes,
as
we
far as
believe that there
supervision?
is, and when the Office of Head Start sent their training and technical assistance people, they have also said that they can see the progress. In fact, after, I didn't make a copy of it, but after their visit in November, one of their summary reports has said that they noted the increase and improvement in that area.
Okay, and is it going to meet the requirements of Head Start, as far
For
as...
active supervision, yes.
Okay, so as far as like, because I'm seeing like a child leaves the room unnoticed, child is found crying.
Right.
So these incidences, is this going to be basically zeroed out with these
Yeah, so
improvements?
we have implemented some different strategies with the help of our TA people to ensure that that does not happen. So things like zoning of staff, right? Where you stand in the classroom ensuring that you don't have your backs to the kids at any time. Anytime that the door opens, that chime goes off and the staff acknowledge that someone came in, do another count of the kids. When we count children, it's not just counting the heads, right? We're looking at their faces and ensuring that I'm looking at a Head Start kid and not a kindergarten kid that kind of wandered into our area. So there's different strategies that they've been putting into place, and from our ongoing monitoring, we have seen that the strategies are being implemented effectively and have not had any concerns with that. If, for instance, we thought that this one staff needed to strengthen in a certain strategy, then we sent our mentor teachers to work directly with them. So, yeah.
Okay. That's good. Do they have a different uniform, the Head Start students? So that's why
No.
you can really, you can pick them out?
Head Start, because again, we are servicing those most in need. We do not require that they wear uniforms. It's whatever they would like to wear is fine. So we don't have one. Maybe when we have a lot of money and we want to look into that, we can try to figure out a uniform. But because we service the neediest of the needy, we would have to provide that to them.
Okay.
Versus we cannot require something of our children to attend. No supplies, no uniforms, it can't be a requirement.
Okay. One of the things I've been a proponent of is school gardens. So instead of, metal playgrounds, is there an option or opportunity to include school gardens in a Head Start?
So we actually do have some school gardens, and we've worked with several entities. So UOG has had a grant for school gardens, and also DOE, the Food Child Nutrition Program, had a grant for farm to school. And so in those centers, whoever was interested in participating, the funding gave us like the blocks to block it off. They gave us dirt, shovels and seeds and things like that. And so most of our schools do have a garden area. That is not part of the outdoor play area. It's not considered part of that. So for instance, Truman, they identified an area at their back door where they enclosed with the concrete blocks, and they started planting stuff there. And so when we were looking at our site visits and our fencing needs, we ensured that because that's right outside the back door, that we're enclosing that garden, because it doesn't make sense. They're going to go outside to the garden, and then we're going to have the same problem of them running away, right? And Harry S. Truman Head Start is at the top floor or top level, and there's a gate there, and service vehicles come in. So we did ensure that if there was a garden area, that we could try to enclose it within that space. Almost all of our centers that I can think of have a school garden area.
Okay, thank you for that. The other thing is curriculum. So, literacy is another thing that I would like to, I'm a big proponent of increasing literacy at a young age, even before school age. So how robust is the literacy program within Head Start? because I think like part of the issue with supervision could be engagement, right? So engage the child
Right.
in learning opportunities, diverse learning opportunities. And is this one of the strategies in regards to supervision? That's being
So
used?
in Head Start, we follow what's called creative curriculum. It is being used by most Head Start programs. The curriculum focuses around studies, so it's based on the children's interests. But as far as literacy, we're trying to do whatever we can to support that in the home as well. So, for instance, we give the children a storybook at our first home visits. Anytime there's something going on, and let's say they come to a training, we get them free books. We are working closely with Humanities Guam for their story time program. And we are also working with the libraries to try to organize like field trips and things like that. Head Start used to be part of Mother Read. All those people who were trained have since moved on, but we're talking with Humanities Guam and trying to train additional people to implement that within the program. I want to say what else is there with literacy. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
the responses and for your participation today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Kanata?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for coming out today. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Are you guys able to attend my hearing for tomorrow? Status update I requested for your office. Mr. Swanson? Are you going to be able to attend tomorrow's hearing on status of Simon Sanchez High School?
We can give you an update to what we have so far.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have any questions for you. I think the panel earlier already exhausted as much as I could ever ask, so I don't want to ask anything and short end our conversations for tomorrow. Okay.
Senator, I'm not sure of a meeting that we're supposed to have tomorrow, so did I miss something? Did we miss something? I don't know.
There was an email sent to you guys. Stand by.
I mean, does it have to be a public hearing? Because if anything, we can meet you afterwards and give you what we know.
Well, this is not a part of this agenda, but I'm just, in short, I'm just really trying to figure out what the status of Simon Sanchez High School. We've had issues with DPW, the AG's office, and it seems to be the same situation we're still facing. But of course, one of my special oversights is Simon Sanchez High School. So along with that, I know it's not a part of the chair's agenda for today. I just wanted to follow up on those areas specifically with you guys if you're not able to attend tomorrow.
Well, I don't have receipt of that, but we can certainly meet you in
It's
your
at
office.
2 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
Will DPW be there as well?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just a part of, it's just a brief on the overview of the construction management services, the IFB intent and RFP intent, timeline, procurement, project timeline as well.
As long as DPW is there, we're able to assist with them.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. See you guys tomorrow then.
Oh, nice. The suspense is killing me. Okay, so Head Start, I think we're good on the Head Start. Just, I guess, final question, Mrs. LePay. March 5th comes and passes in the event that we don't satisfy the demands from the federal Head Start program recipients. What then will happen?
So we will lose funding. DOE is not able to reapply for funding within a certain period. I want to say it might be 5 years, but I'm not really certain. I have not explored that because I do not believe that we will need to explore that. I feel that as a program, the community, the DOE team, our Head Start staff are very focused, and I'm sure we're going to meet that deadline. So I choose not to explore what might happen after March 5th.
All right. How about you, Mr. Superintendent? If we lose the program, which I you know, obviously no one wants that to happen, but if we do, are we just closing the doors entirely, or is there any thought to this being absorbed with local funds?
Our ability to, well, first of all, this is the top issue. Like I said before, it's ahead of the other priorities, which are all important. But we're working this so that we don't have to cross that bridge. What would happen is we would work out the remaining time of the grant, and during that time, Head Start would advertise for another entity that would want to take it up. But we're going to try to work that we don't do that. I'm not going to try to work, that's what we're doing. And we're on track so far.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, reorganization of the Guam Department of Education, consolidating and closure of schools. This was a topic that you had brought up, I want to say a couple months ago in a previous oversight hearing. And you had said that the process for this would begin in January and that it was tied to the lifting of the third-party fiduciary, and that you were looking at which schools could be closed, which school populations could be consolidated with other schools, and then generally just overall reorganization of the department relative to schools. So since you have said that publicly, I have been in receipt of a lot of concerns from parents, rumors even. I mean, I just was talking to a constituent who swears to God that Sanchez is going to be up there at Tejan High School and then Tejan's going to move to GW, which I have never heard anything officially on any of this. But as you noted in one of your reports to the board, people are talking about this already. So what is the status of that? And in trying to just piece together how you have left whole schools off the refurbishment contract, I think people are trying to put two and two together and not come up with five, right? And so I don't know if you're tipping your hand unintentionally on which schools you anticipate closing or consolidating, but just what is the information as of today, sir?
At this point, they have not been identified. The process to do that work, we're going to solicit stakeholders over the next 2 weeks to begin that process. It will be public, and it will probably be contentious. Rezoning always is. It's not easy in any community. And here even more so because most of the schools have a long-standing set of roots in the culture, and people have senses of ownership and tradition in their families, and those are all to be respected. But at the same time, we have capacity for nearly 40,000 students, and we have right at 24,000 students. So we need to look at the real estate, we need to look at the sustainability, and then we need to look at the ground communication, transport, all of the kind of mechanics that it takes to get kids back and forth to school. So I will be soliciting members from this body, or inviting anyway, and also folks from our Chamber of Commerce, our parent community, and the mayors. And so I want to move across the spectrum of our community because it does impact everybody. We will identify as we can, and there is an existing facility strategic plan. One of the things in that is called for is to build a middle school. But when you put the words build and school together, we're talking about a serious amount of money. Now that calls for a school on the site of the current Chief Brody campus. That would be an expensive proposition. You're looking at $75 million probably to build a multi-story middle school. Okay, do we want to do that? Can we do that? Those are all conversations we have to have. And then we have to look at the relative state of restoring the facilities we have or surplusing them, and take into account also what may or may not be the load that's brought on by increased military presence in the community. So there's a lot of discussion to work. Getting down to which facilities. Right now, I mean, we're going to start with capacity, vice actual attendance and enrollment, and look for those places that are obvious wins. It may be as simple as relocating a student body to another campus that has more capacity, moving those students and their teachers to those. And that's part of the thought process behind this campuses that have got restoration dollars invested in them. So at this point, we don't know the answer. I know my own grandson, who's a senior at Guam High School, came to me and told me which school was going to close. I said, that's really interesting, because I don't know that answer yet. But we'll find that together as a community.
Let me just ask you, and I asked you this last month, are there any plans to move, for example, Simon Sanchez, they're double sessioning with JFK, which has presented a lot of issues relative to violence and whatnot at the school, because, you know, like you had just said, a lot of our schools have existing culture, roots, and so you're putting these two schools, which are, you know, on paper, rivals of each other in the same campus. And I'd asked you before, is the Guam Department of Education looking at any alternative location for the Simon Sanchez school population before the end of this school year? Are we just going to ride this out and have the JFK students continue to show up for school at, 6 in the morning or whatever?
I don't have another space where we can do that this year. There is a possibility once we get FBLG back on their campus to be able to move that population. But we're going to be double session somewhere with our high schools. The other option would be to move the staff and the kids to Southern, but that's an awful long bus ride. So, and I have to consider the capacities that DPW has to move students at what time and when. So that's the only place where we actually have physical space that we could do that with, but we haven't even begun to entertain that conversation.
So I think another obvious question is if we're talking about a system that is built for an enrollment of 40,000 and we're now down to 24,000, and we're talking about consolidating, closing schools, I think one of the obvious questions is the construction of a new Simon Sanchez. I mean, I don't know how many groundbreakings we've been through, but in your opinion, given that you are now going to be undertaking this effort to consolidate and close schools, is it still feasible to build a new high school for Simon Sanchez, or to build any new school at this point, if we're looking at potentially a scenario where we could have entire schools closed down and then be able to use that footprint? And I'm not speaking out against the building of a new Sanchez, I'm just asking, in your opinion, is that still something that's feasible?
That's a significant student population at the northern end of the island, and the capacity doesn't exist on the other campuses. So without rezoning the whole system to move more students farther south, we already know that moving students from the Tamuning area down to Jose Rios is an issue. And now we're talking about going even farther. So keeping the capacity in the area, in the region of the island that it is much more reasonable. If you're looking just at numbers, yeah, it's a different discussion, but there's more to it than numbers.
Okay. Did you guys have any questions on reorganization, consolidation, and closure of schools? Senator Lujan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I hear you right, that Simon Sanchez then will, when it's decided, I guess, it would be rebuilt then? It won't be one of the schools that would be considered as being consolidated?
I haven't looked at it in that sense. Now, like I said, the consensus that comes out of the community work is going to be the driver. For me to make an arbitrary decision about which school is going to go where is not reasonable. If we, our stakeholders are all going to be impacted. They need to be in the conversation.
Okay. Back in the, that being said, I guess the talk about school closures and whether it's a rumor or something that's been heard by an official and then spread out. I know the enrollment has dropped in this past year and actually building up to this year, actually coming up to this year. going to charter schools, maybe off island as well, and going to private schools. In considering consolidating schools and maybe closing down a school or two, would that then free up that school as an interim campus, as Tijan was designated to be an interim campus years back under the Camacho administration?
Well, an interim campus would certainly be ideal, especially when we get into larger refurbishment contracts, because we need to more effectively do the work, we need to move students off-site so that contractors can work uninhibited. But right now, we don't have that capacity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The future then of Simone Sanchez and JFK and its double session at this point, do you foresee JFK continuing that double session in this 24-25 school year?
At this point, that's where it is. Like I said, once we can get FBLG back on their campus, and the term of the renovation work for that campus is 12 months to complete, so which would, right now, we're at the final contract award stage. So that would have them being finished by Christmas next year. I could move those kids back in. We could probably...
Christmas of next year?
Yeah, they've got a year to perform, to do the whole renovation. Could be less. If that opens up Ukadu, then we could consider to move a double session there, which would be closer to home and easier to handle.
Okay, so again, a status quo for, I guess, next school year for...
Correct,
Simone
at this point, yes,
At
sir.
this point, yeah. Are we talking about the 180-day school? Is that, yeah. Where are we at with that, in the 180 days? And I mean, I think you're asking for the legislature to waive that? And do we have a cost on what it's going to be without the waiver?
Yes, we do.
We do? Okay.
We have. Right now, we're in a situation where across the system, Boulevard put us 3 days over, or 3 days short.
I'm sorry?
Typhoon Boulevard took us 3 days short because we cut our school year to a minimum to start. So we lost 3 days.
Okay.
We had initially planned 3 days to recover those, but one of them was taken away. That was the day after Thanksgiving. It was changed to a holiday. So we're still short 2.
2 days, okay.
And we would need to waive that, but the cost for us to stay in session day by day is $747,193 a day.
Okay, so about 750 grand, right?
Yes.
Roughly? Yeah. Per day?
Per day.
Okay, so those 2 days already, so you're at 1.4, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that it? I mean, yeah.
That's the cost.
Is that, that's, and how many schools are affected by that?
All of them.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, are you talking, is this per school or per?
No, that's
That's
the total
a total,
operating
okay.
cost per day.
Per day, okay. So we're 2 days, basically at $750,000 per day. So those 2 days that need to be made up, if it's not waived, it will have to come up with $4 million, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Is that figure accurate, Mr. Superintendent? So you're saying that overall across GDOE, we are only 3 days shy of meeting the 180 day of instructional time mandate? Because I'll just speak from personal experience. So my 2 young kids attended DL Paris, and they were on the ASS alternating school schedule. So for the first, I want to say about a month or so, they went to school every other day. Because they were sharing the campus with UPI. And so my Callie Joe and my Chase would go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, and then the following week they would go on Tuesday, Thursday, and then the students from UPI would go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it was 2 schools in one campus. And I know that I spoke to you before, and you said that, work was being provided to kids on the off days, but I don't agree. Because for my personal example, that wasn't the case. And I've spoken with many stakeholders across the district who have said, even up to recently, they weren't being given the assignments on those off days. So how did you reach this determination that we're only 3 days short of 180 days of instructional time?
That's for the overall system, and I understand your question. We can also break out the cost of an individual school.
Yeah, because I'm not comfortable. First of all, I don't support a waiver. I think we've waived so many of the requirements in this school year and in school years prior to this that I'm just tired of the kids getting shortchanged on the education. So if you can come to us with an accurate figure that takes into account the schools that are on the alternating school schedule and the schools that were in the cohort, schools that were in double session, and come to us with the correct number of days that the students were short per school, for example, so that we can make a determination about whether or not, we're comfortable with waiving. Because like I said, if you come here and say, we're 3 days short, I'm pretty sure the public's going to say, it's not a big deal. But when you start to get into the weeds on it, you'll have many parents across the district say that no, their kids haven't gotten work on every single day. And I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, we could have fun with this. We could do things that we did in COVID, where we have reading days, fun activity days that count as instructional time. So until you give us an accurate count of exactly how short we are across the district, whether that's 3 days, and then specifically per school on the ASS, at the cohort, the double sessions, we get those numbers in front of us with the dollar amount, then we can have the conversation about waiving the requirement of 180 instructional days. So,
All right, we'll get them for you.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Paris?
I can't hear you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess a lot of this work is going to be done in January in regards to consolidation. Just a thought about consolidation is this idea of, basing it not just on the amount of students, but the intent of the school. So one of the things that I've been trying to advocate for is more pre-apprenticeships within schools.
You can, yeah.
And so if you have like a magnet type of format in a school where, the school is designed to produce more carpenters or produce more, environmentalists, right? Environmental careers or biology, whatever, environmental careers. So I just want to put it out there. As you're thinking about consolidating schools, tie it with the curriculum and not just about the number of students that are within a certain area, because I think this would probably, as you are refurbishing schools, maybe we can do this thing simultaneously. The school, the refurbishing the school would match the intent of the curriculum. So this is something I would like to add to this conversation. Is this something that you're able to do? Because one of the ideas is that, if students can graduate with a job in hand, right? That's the idea of pre-apprenticeships, is they are working towards an apprentice job. And imagine if these schools are able to put out maintenance workers, qualified maintenance workers, things that our community needs. There's a lot of shortages of qualified staff in different agencies. I've seen this. But if we can really have the intent that these schools are going to produce these type of workers, maybe if I can have a comment from the panel on this.
Now, we most assuredly take those things into consideration, program and capacities, beginning especially at the middle school level is certainly part of the equation.
Okay, in regards to consolidation, so it looks like the chances of consolidating are most likely going to be elementary schools because there's just a higher number of them. Is that correct?
That's yes, in short.
Okay. All right. And then, of course, when you're talking about cross-leveling, of course, there's the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. Is this something that is allowable or allowed or can be negotiated?
Yes, it is allowable, and we're working very closely with the association to be sure that we stay within the limits of the contract.
Okay. Yeah, I think, it's been said many times in several of these oversight hearings that the overhead is large, right? It's large and we don't have enough funding to really maintain it. So I think this is a step in the right direction, but I do appreciate the the intent and the process that you have in place to engage all the community. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Kanata? Okay.
Sir, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Could I just provide clarification on the school calendar?
Sure.
So I'm
Can you
Melissa
identify yourself?
Yeah, I was going to. Melissa Mofnes, the principal for FB Leon Guerrero, as well as the chair for the calendar committee. So initially, the calendar was looked at to take a look at the number of days that we needed to make up. And so in the beginning of the year, all of the other days were front-loaded, and then we took a look at the 3 additional days. So technically, the calendar just needed to address the 3 school calendar days that was short, based off of the public law. And so the 3 days that were identified by the calendar committee was the November 24th, which was then deemed as a holiday by the executive order. So we still had 2 more days. The other 2 days with the agreement of GFT was to move those 2 days to the PTC and have that as a working day as well as the last teacher work day. So that would have covered the number of days missed by the storm. However, through the inspections and any other closures through water or any other closures, that had to be taken a look at individually as a school, because then we need to take a look at how many minutes per school that they would have lost. And initially, when they did go onto a alternating schedule, the intent with those schools was that they were supposed to provide the assignments. Can't speak for why that was not done, whether it was just an individual oversight or whether it was school-based, but the intent was that everybody was supposed to provide instruction during those off days, because they were supposed to provide it during online. So if the committee is aware that we need to take a look at those individual schools. However, that would mean different schools extending the day, and that was the only option we had because we ran out of the number of days. If we go past that number of days, we're going to have to put in to the fact that we're going to have to pay the teachers beyond their duty day, and we'd have to look at the number of teachers that we'd have to identify in the schools to address how much money that's going to cost. So the only other way that we can look at that would be to extend the time within the day. As for for example, if FB had to extend a time, we'd have to go over probably up until 6 and then start releasing like at 6, after 6, which would pose another issue, right, of getting off late and things like that. But for the other schools, we may be able to identify the number of minutes, but that's going to take calculation and time that my committee needs to work on, that we would need to identify those days and times and how much time, and then we'd have to work with bus operations. And so depending upon the number of days that they would need to make up, it would determine the time that they would get off. So I hope that provides some clarity.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Yeah, and I know all too well. I mean, my son attends FB Leon Guerrero, and they get out of school a little before 6, and they just lost the baseball season because they get off from school so late that in order to practice for baseball, they need to have a field with lights, but for whatever reason, the landlord at Ukadu is not accommodating the FB Leon Guerrero students for baseball practice, so they can't practice at GGO because the lights are out of the GGO field. So yeah, all of these examples of the decades of neglect, I mean, they're coming home to roost today. So yeah, it does sound like you did an accurate counting of the instructional days from those schools that were on the ASS. And as soon as you could provide the committee with that information, like I said, I mean, I think we're all on the same page that, yeah, if we go over and we have to meet this mandate, then of course we're going to have to pay teachers to work. But, you know, again, we can't have this conversation until we have the full information in front of us. So I appreciate that, Mr. Superintendent.
And another factor that will support this and we want to consider, we are planning summer school at all of our campus locations. We used to just, before COVID, it was limited to zones. Last year and this summer, we're planning it will be in full session for summer school. So we'll be able to extend student years that way as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Cross-leveling, and then if we could just touch on the student violence real quick before public comment. So what's the status of the cross-leveling? That's been completed, or are we looking at implementing the changes, ma'am?
That would be me again.
Well,
to
you have
answer
plenty
that.
hats.
I have multiple hats. Right now, what we're looking at is we took a look at the numbers across all the schools. A maximization committee was created with the previous deputy, and so we took those numbers and we looked at that and started to identify teachers where we would need to spread them across the shortages. So we do have a number of things we're looking at. Certification seems to be one of our biggest struggle. And so they may be not certified in elementary, but that's where the need is, or it could be in secondary and they're not certified there. So our numbers are increasing. We did take a look at the excess teachers identified. The other thing is, even though the maximization identified vacancies or a number, we have to consider that some of those are just vacancies with no body attached to it, and then the other is with bodies. And so when we take a look at that number, we still may come out short in terms of putting certified teachers in their correct identified certification. And that's really difficult for the secondary level because most of the vacancies happen with middle school. And so with middle school, we have to wait until January, till the next semester, to move our teachers because the classes will end by then. Again, we have to take a look at certification. So with the teachers, we've identified a couple of areas that we just need to take a look at. So with teachers, we're closing that out. We've also looked at other areas within consulting resource room teachers, which is the CRTs. We've taken a look at that as well. And so we're just not looking at only the teachers, we're looking at cross-leveling across all areas, and we have identified and have been making progress in moving those teachers.
So I remember the initial documents that the committee received relative to cross-leveling reflected a surplus of teachers, but I'm hearing that those documents are no longer accurate, and is that because you're kind of going through and doing the things that you just said?
Yes, so the deputy's office is working with HR to identify those positions and then clarifying that with the administrators. And of course, there are some in-house changes that they would like to do. And so we just have to make sure that the schools may be giving up a position, but it's not necessarily a body, it's just a vacancy that was not filled. Or it could be sometimes unfunded, right? And so we have to just work those numbers, but we have been working with HR to make sure that we're getting those numbers accurate. And so we're just finalizing that because January 16 will be our deadline to move everybody else and then determine then the certification areas that we're lacking.
Thank you. Lastly, on the school violence, so the Attorney General has been calling my office trying to determine availability for this roundtable that he's anticipating on holding. And that's because of the increased or, just the number of violent incidences that we've had at the schools, to include most recently the viral video of the fight up at JFK with Sanchez. I will say, though, that I have noticed that you've been calling the cops on these students, and we've seen, unfortunately, it is what it is, a few students arrested. So outside of that, what are we doing to mitigate these instances of school violence?
Chris.
Thank you, Deputy Chris.
I rely on the experts.
Right.
We are paying attention and working at it. It is a complex issue.
I appreciate the promotion. Still a mid-level manager, SSD administrator, Chris Anderson. Thank you for the question, Senator. I don't have the specific details in terms of the fights that happened at Simon Sanchez or JFK or GW High School. I could just speak in broad terms. As you mentioned, one of the main responsibilities for the school is to contact GPD in these cases proactively, especially if they have any intel that there's going to be some kind of a riot or fight. My office gets calls also from school administrators to try and coordinate to have our SROs come and assist with just additional support. They do have some equipment that they do carry in their official capacity, and so they do serve as a pretty good deterrent on campuses when GPD is not able to come to the school and assist. But it's hard to speak in specific terms in terms of what we can do to try and address the issues of violence, aside from just continuing to work with our students to ensure that we have very stringent policies in terms of how we address violence on campus, making sure our kids are fully aware of the consequences when they do physically combat. We were both in high school at one point in the past, and we all know that this is not uncommon for students to physically engage in combat. So I don't want to I don't want to not misappropriate attention to the issue. I'm just saying that these kind of things happen on our campuses. And I think what's important is that the schools are taking immediate action to address the fights when they do happen, and then that they are doing what they can do proactively to try and ensure that kids understand expected behavior, trying to model that behavior on campus, try and provide opportunities for students to try and work out their problems peacefully, although we know that that's not a very easy thing for students to do. Usually in high school, you try and get students to try and take advantage of peer mediation or conflict resolution type programs, and that's not the first course of action they're going to choose when they want to address some kind of conflict they've got with another student. Some of these fights also have the involvement of alcohol and drugs, and so that's another factor that has to be controlled and addressed as well. We do have some programs in our schools that are trying to address students who are coming to school intoxicated. Obviously, the heaviest thing we can do is to suspend the student, but we do have substance use intervention programs that we try and get our kids to participate in those kind of programs and try and address whatever issues are that are causing them to want to use drugs or alcohol. But I think, again, for the community to know that these kind of issues, I think, are a very small percentage of the student population. They do happen, obviously, with social media and technology. These things can go viral very fast, and it may even give the impression as if our schools are completely out of control and our students are not safe. And that's just a false reality. I mean, we have fights that happen, and they're pretty serious, and we take them seriously. But I don't think that this is a big problem that we have on our campuses in terms of we have a big number of our students who are acting in this kind of manner.
I get what you're saying, because I've often wondered, is there an actual increase in school violence, or is it just one of these generational things where now they have the ability to film it and to post it on social media and to reach more people? Because you're right, I mean, I've seen some legendary rumbles at GW, that never were recorded and never went viral. But I will say that I want to disagree with you a little bit, because I think that there are issues relative to the fights, and then, as you know, the FBI and the Guam Police Department have also stood up a program, and this is more on the side of the school threats. So to me, we've got a couple, issues that, I mean, we can talk about how serious they are or they're not, but the fact remains that we have the AG trying now to address the fights, and then you have the FBI and GPD addressing the threats of violence to the schools. And I'm not sure if I had mentioned this in the last hearing, but I had a conversation with you about the threat to FP Leon Guerrero that wasn't reported publicly. And I know that threat occurred, I believe, in the first week of November, and there had been a release that had gone out towards the end of the month. But as a parent of FP Leon Guerrero student, I was curious why the parents were not informed. When I spoke with the chief of police, he had said that GPD did respond to the school, and there was a threat of violence that had occurred, and that was why GPD responded. So, and I asked you this last month, what is the protocol? And as a parent, I'm pretty sure any other parent in the public school system wants to know when the police respond to a school, or when they conduct a search, or when there's a threat of violence. Right, so what is the exact protocol for those types of occurrences?
Deputy Perez had addressed in a principals meeting last week some protocols in regards to incident reports and after-action reports that are due from schools when situations like this do happen. I think the principals are empowered to be able to make those kind of decisions in terms of when they think it's necessary to inform their parents. And we do have technology with our student information system for the schools to be able to send out blasts of information to their parents to let them know if there's some kind of a critical incident that they think the parents should be aware of. I know that you were concerned about not being noticed about that particular threat that happened at FBLG. All I can say is that principals are aware of, I think, these kind of situations and when they think it's important to notify their parents. I'll let the principals speak to that particular issue as to why maybe the families weren't notified about the threat that they received. But in general, principals are encouraged to make sure that they let their parents know, especially when there's a critical incident, so that they're not guessing in terms of what's happening. Should I go to my child's school to pick up my child, or can I be, rest assured that the school officials have it under control and that my child's safe. So yeah, it's important to get this kind of information out. I think the other thing that Deputy Perez clarified last week in terms of the requirements for sending the incident reports is also to make sure that our public information officer is aware, so that that person can also maybe work with the school and make that determination as to whether or not families need to be notified or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Chris, but to me it seems like anytime you have the police respond to the school when there's a threat of violence and they conduct any type of action, I think that rises to the level where you would have to, in my opinion, notify this, because it's inconsistent. And I think in this case you have to, again, provide the consistent level so that the stakeholders and the parents know what to expect. So I expect, as a parent, and I think any parent would agree, that when a threat rises to the level of a police response, then to me that warrants that the public be noticed, yeah. And since we're talking about FB Leon Guerrero, I know that you are the principal. It's another hat that you wear.
So if I may, on my school issue, I did follow protocol. I informed who needed to be, but upon our facts finding, it was not an immediate threat at the situation. It was just because of a social media.
Right. Let me just interrupt you right there, ma'am. And so this is what I mean about consistency. So GW was in receipt of a social media threat in which a student had threatened to perform acts of violence at the school. And now I know that this threat at FB Leon Guerrero was on social media and involved similarly threats of violence. I had heard a picture of a gun. And so that's what I'm talking about when you have the same thing happen at two different schools. Please.
If I may, through our fact finding, it was a picture that was airdropped. And then eventually when we did a lockdown or shelter in place, we were able to do a search. We were able to find the student that had it. Upon the search, there was no evidence of any guns. We did find 2 toy guns that we confiscated. And GPD, because it was a threat, we did call to follow protocol and make sure we have a case number. Whether or not it was a gun found or anything, we still had to make that terroristic conduct call. They did come, they did give us a case number. And that was written in the student's file. As for the disciplinary procedures, we did proceed and still conducted a DAC, which again, at the time when I spoke to Deputy Perez and Chris Anderson, there was no immediate threat because it was just a drop of a picture, and we did pull in that student, but it was no immediate danger at the time. Of me needing to announce that because at the time we already had cleared it. I did speak with him and the deputy, and we agreed that if those are things that should be part of an SOP, that we just put out a swift announcement. The only thing is if it's a small matter that really I don't want to alarm any parents that, we had a threat made to the school because they're middle school students, and kids all the time talk about trying to do stuff to the school, and I know we need to take take a look at the picture in a bigger aspect to make sure that we're keeping the kids safe. And we did talk about putting that as part of one of the things is to announce. And so moving forward, if we have to go on a lockdown, we'll go ahead and put out a swift alert. And so we've addressed that. It was just as he said, I made the call to deem it as something I needed to announce to the entire public, or something that we just contained at our school that did it. Because then if we're going to keep announcing, right, it's going to seem to parents that we're not providing a safer environment, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to just handle it at the school site. And but moving forward, we did discuss to put out the alert.
Okay. So I appreciate that. And I get what you're saying, but we have to take each of these threats seriously, and I don't ever want to be in a situation where we receive a threat and the thinking is like, oh, they're just kids talking, they talk.
Yeah, but that was after we did the fact finding. So that was not the immediate decision. It was after everything was done, and then GPD did give us the case number.
Right. And again, I just wondered, because you get one school undergoes a lockdown, you send out a press release and everyone knows about it. And so I was just looking for that consistency, whether or not I'm a parent of a student at the school. I think that's one thing that parents want, is consistency across the board. If you're going to lock this school down and tell everyone about it, then you should do the same for all the schools.
And we're working on it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Senator Paris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel. I just have a question. So, Mr. Anderson, do you keep statistics on school violence, and do you have a breakdown of the, what instigated it?
We do keep statistics on all violent offenses, as a matter of fact, all behavioral offenses that happen across the district that are adjudicated by the administrator. Those are captured in our student information system. So yes, we can report that. In terms of the reason as to why the fight happened or why the behavior happened, that's not necessarily readily available in PowerSchool. But when school administrators do investigate a behavioral offense, all the supporting documentation that they gather for that to come to their conclusion as to whether or not a student is guilty of an offense is all part of the student's discipline record. So we could easily, ascertain what the reason was for whatever behavioral offense happened. But in general, we have a reporting mechanism to be able to give community leaders, especially our leadership in the department, a profile in terms of where our students are at with different types of behavioral offenses every month.
Okay, and then, so to what extent has vape been a part of the school violence? Is there a link between vaping and violence in the schools?
Interesting you bring that up, because I believe in one of our fights that just happened recently at, I think, Teton High School, the principal indicated that the reason for the fight was based on one student stealing another student's vape device. So they are related, they can be related in terms of things like that, but I don't believe that most of our fighting offenses are over vape devices. But vape is a chronic challenge in our school system. It's one of the top 5 behavioral issues. I believe it was 2 hearings ago that we did provide statistics on vape offenses over the last 5 years, and so it is significant. And we are submitting testimony on Senator Fisher's bill that's coming up in terms of things that we hope that maybe that bill can do to try and address the issues of proper disposal of vape devices.
Okay, and in regards to behavioral response to that, what is the school's response to vape?
Well, right now, our policy is, of course, we don't, once we confiscate vape devices, they're not returned to the families, and so that hence the issue about proper disposal. We're trying to figure out a very responsible way of trying to properly dispose of all of the different vape devices that our schools collect from students that bring them to campus. So obviously, we confiscate the devices. Our board policy right now calls for students, any kind of nicotine-related device, either possession or use of, students are suspended 3 days, in 3-day intervals. First offense, 3 days, second offense is 6 days, et cetera, all the way up to 10 days of suspension. But right now, what we're doing is we're leveraging those suspension days for students to participate in brief tobacco intervention. So we're trying to make sure that our students, again, get as much educational information as they can to make better choices in terms of using or possessing vape devices. But very difficult. Nicotine is very addictive, as you probably know. And so we're dealing with students who've been using nicotine for many years and therefore very addicted to it. And so we're trying to figure out ways to, manage their addiction and in the same respect, don't bring those kind of devices on our campuses.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what I'm really trying to get at is what are some of the proactive measures too in regards to school violence? Because, vape is one part of the subset of it. This idea of zero tolerance to school violence. Does DOE have this approach?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's an automatic 10-day suspension for students, who get in trouble who are found guilty of physical combating on campuses.
Okay, and as far as getting to the root of the problem, though, I think that, yes, suspension is one thing, but so that they don't recur.
Well, we encourage our schools to do child study teams, to make referrals to our behavioral health team, to try and assess and understand, what issues students may have. A lot of our students come with a lot of different baggage, a lot of different challenges. And so it's it's not easy to just sort of identify a fixed number of different issues as to why students may be acting out the way they do. But nonetheless, aside from holding them fully accountable for their behavior, it's really trying to address, like you mentioned, maybe the root issue is in terms of what's going on. Is it family dysfunction? Is it, mental health challenges? What have you. There's a gamut of different reasons as to why students may act out, and of course, schools need to try and help identify that. But ultimately, as you mentioned, it is zero tolerance. First offense, a student can be suspended for 10 days. Second offense, they can call a DAC hearing, which is a discipline advisory council hearing, to request for additional 10 days of suspension or possibly even expulsion. So that's probably the most difficult thing we can do for a student, is to remove them from their educational environment for a given school year. But again, the issues are, what are we doing to try and keep our kids in school and make sure they graduate on time? Part of it is their own individual responsibility, I believe, for them to act responsibly while they're on campus. Our responsibility is to the whole to ensure that all students are able to come and receive a free and appropriate education. And when you have some of those characters, and mind you, there are a small percentage of them, I believe, and if you look at the data, it shows that this is a small group of kids who are getting into this kind of trouble. It's not the majority of students, for sure. But it's holding them fully accountable and then trying to provide the necessary supports to keep them in school.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, is school violence increasing based on the reports that you are publishing?
Senator, if I can just get back to you on that, I haven't looked at the data recently to know, for at least the last few years in terms of whether we're seeing an increase in the level of violence. But from what I can recall, there isn't a significant increase in violence in our campuses. As I mentioned, violence is not even in the top 5 major behavioral offenses that we do have right now. So, but it does exist, and it happens every year. Fights happen, and schools do their best to try and mitigate and address them when they do happen.
Sorry, one more question. SROs, I know when I was a teacher, they were pretty prominent. Are they still being utilized, and do we need more funding for that?
Well, it depends. If you're referring to the SROs that were provided by the courts, these were Category 1 officers. The court basically had a grant through had funding sources through our consolidated grant to provide the department with SROs. These are Category 1 officers. I believe the court was hiring probation officers, and then they were slotting them into our schools to support that program. That's not what the department has at this point. We have school resource officers / attendants. They're no different than what they were formerly called, which is school attendance officers. Their function is still the same. However, under the former superintendent, John Fernandez, he basically reviewed the job description for the school attendance officers and realized that there were 2 laws that were not incorporated into their job description. One that identified them as special deputy marshals with the courts to process serve, and then the other law for the police officers and standards and training that identifies special deputy marshals as Category 2 officers. So basically, Mr. Fernandez incorporated those responsibilities because it does require them to take a PT test. It does require them to receive training for the equipment that they do have. And so he was basically reconciling their job description to include those 2 laws. But our SROs are specific to truancy prevention. They don't do any of the Category 1 law enforcement that the SROs were doing that were provided by the courts. So do we need Category 1 SRO officers? I would say yes. I think that would be very helpful for our schools, serve as a great deterrent. You know, and it would be a great community-type policing program for the either Guam Police Department or some other law enforcement entity to be able to come in and have law enforcement officers come in and be a part of our school campus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you to the panel, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Kanata?
You know, I think we all have concerns about the violence in the community and most certainly in the public school system. For me, zero tolerance is just removal automatically from the DOE system entirely. Why are we giving them suspension? For me, suspension doesn't work because what the parent does is drop them off to the grandma's house and all they do is play games. So we either use them, I mean, physically in the school and make them paint the wall, you know, do some work detail and make them, you know, have some character building activities, because honestly, I doubt that anything is happening when these children are being sent home for suspension. And especially if they're a problem child, I think it's already gone too far. And if they're a fraction of students that are particularly in this category, then just suspend them indefinitely from the DOE curriculum entirely. And if they want to go to school, the parents have to pay for private school. Make the private school deal with them. Because I honestly don't think DOE is a babysitting services. You are there to go to school and educate yourself and learn and, you know, be a community, a responsible community member. This is not a babysitting service. And I think some of these kids are beyond control. And I think also other disciplines need to be taken out at the home front. This is not the teacher, the principal. I mean, maybe we need to make them kneel on rice again, or spank them with a paddle, because it's really these kids. I think just because they watch something on TikTok or watch a movie, let's do it in school. I mean, thank God we're not having active shooters yet. I mean, literally, knock on wood. But this is the situation we're coming to because we're just suspending them. Vape and drugs, zero tolerance, just zero tolerance. Just remove them from the school entirely. And I'm almost certain you guys have difficulty trying to find the parent, because the parent already knows the kid's beyond control. Oh, it's not my problem. So as much as it's an uncomfortable statement to say, it's the reality. You take away Wi-Fi from a kid, oh my God, they go nuts, they're berserk. So, you know, that's my comment here is, if it's zero tolerance, I think at the end of the day, just remove them from DOE entirely. Not even transfer to another school, not even transfer, just because they're in GGO, transfer them to Marisa Elementary. No, zero. You wanna go to school, your parents have to go pay for you to go to private school now. Because I just think it's ridiculous that at this scale that we have to keep making alternative programs for them to try to get back on track. The DOE system is not a babysitting service. That's all.
Thank you, Senator Kanata.
That's actually true. We're not babysitting. But we need to also look at, as a SPED teacher, formal SPED teacher for an ED program, we need to look at the child study team. I had students that wanted to actually stab my staff as well as try to stab me. And we're trying to, at middle school, I mean, even we had a garden just to get them to calm down and relax and stuff like that. But we also want to afford them an opportunity to finish school, especially those students. Because I've gone to their houses and they're in the jungle. Sometimes they're in the car. So when I go with the social worker and we look at them, we understand where they're coming from. But yeah, we're not a babysitting service. And we want to make sure that those who are causing the offense are addressed. And definitely, we have a task force working on strengthening our policies. And yes, Senator, with your support, we want to move on with that.
You know, even the vape is such a big issue. Well, they can afford vape, they can afford private school. Do whatever you want at the private school. But DOE, no. Zero tolerance for vape and drugs, period. End of discussion. Just tell them, I don't know. We got other bigger fish to fry. We got ceilings to repair. We got, you know, management issues to fix. We got Simon Sanchez to build. Make the work detail be groundbreaking for Simon Sanchez. They need to start digging for the forms. Yeah. But other than that, thank you.
Oh, because it's not just vape, we're also looking at the drug.
Dab pens.
Yeah. So there's alcoholism. There's also that vape is it, what is it called? Okay.
Dab pens, which is a, THC basically for, or vaping devices using THC. We're starting to see a lot more of that in our schools now as well.
Okay, thank you. One more thing. Do you guys have truancy officers, or what are they called?
SROs.
They're called SROs/attendants. But we're working with our HR section, Ms. Ada, to try and work on changing the title back to perhaps School Attendance Officer 2 to differentiate between the old job description that did not include the changes in the law. But yeah, I think it's caused a little bit of confusion in our community about what exactly do they do, because they are sharing the same title as the Category 1 officers provided by the court, but their function is very different.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh.
Maybe we could also look at the judicial branch assisting with the return of those officers.
Yeah, I think that was a grant. So if there's opportunities, I know you guys were talking about grants earlier, that may be something that you want to look at. Or maybe we bring back some of the retired truant officers, because I know back when I was in school, oh man, whew. And the dab pens, you're right. So this is going back to, I think it was last year, there was an incident in Untalan Middle School where a couple of students had gotten sick on the dab pens, right? And was there a fight at TGen that was relative to these dab pens or vape or something?
Yes.
All right.
More recent fight.
I want to share with you guys that I had a conversation with the chief of police about this back when this incident happened in Untalan, and I was told that we'd have to follow up with public health because a lot of these dab pens that these students are getting are what they call the Delta 8 and the Delta 9, and those are not regulated at all. And so, and these are being sold pretty much at every vape shop across the island, and we know that the kids are getting the regular vape, and obviously now they're getting this Delta 8, Delta 9 stuff. And so basically the conversation I had with the chief was that since the legalization of marijuana, and again, I don't think these products fall under that this would be something that is under this jurisdiction of public health. So maybe we can write a letter or talk to public health about regulating these products which are falling into our kids' hands, right? Okay. Anything further, colleagues? Oh, Senator Kanata. I'm sorry, Senator Kanata. Senator Paris, go ahead.
We got a good guy in the room. Mr. Angel Sablan, he got appointed to be director of DPR. I got an idea. We can make them do workforce program. Instead of suspending them, send them to DPR and make them bush cut the parks and recreational facilities and paint it. You know, you want to do drugs? So start painting. Highlight your life there. Highlight your life there. And also bush cut so you can make sure you're tired correctly, right? Yeah, build a skill. So, you know, if you want to keep doing drugs, start bush cutting. You can bush cut at 5 o'clock in the morning if you want, or 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it sounds like PACE from back in the day.
Yeah, well, we do have PACE, but I think we changed the name again, right? What is it called? Alternative.
And that's just for credit recovery, not necessarily behavioral issues,
see?
right? Yeah.
But yes, just find some kind of other disciplinary avenue because it doesn't seem like it's working, and these kids are just going to keep going and doing it again and again and again until they regret what they're doing.
Well, just so you know, Senator, schools in the past have been coordinating with their village mayors to try and take on these students when they're suspended so that there's some kind of structured activity for them during the length of their suspension. So it's although the DPR is not a bad suggestion, I'm just putting it out there that schools have been working with their mayors to try and address kids that are suspended as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, the team, for coming out again. Merry Christmas.
Senator Paris, thank you, Senator Kanata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you're thinking about consolidating schools, so there is a need with FIFA. So they're looking for sites to bring in more students. They have to turn away students from soccer. And so maybe there's a way to partner up with FIFA, and it could be revenue generating as well for DOE, in addition to other opportunities, I think. The other question I have, this is in regards to, I just found this out recently, the Aspire procurement. So that faltered. Is there, I mean, I heard that it faltered. Is this accurate? Aspire, standards-based. Okay, Deputy Sanchez left. Is he still here?
Yeah, so let me just, if I may, Senator, so you're
Sure.
talking about the assessment testing,
Yeah, the summative assessment, Aspire.
right? And so we had released, there was a report that was released recently that had to use data from, I believe, 21, 22, because we don't have any current data because this assessment tool was not procured last year.
That, excuse me, that's accurate. The Aspire tool has been discontinued largely across the nation because it doesn't align with the standards that we're working to. What happened last year was, as I understand it, with the procurement of the new assessment, which is the Smarter Balanced Assessment. There's two that are used nationally, the Smarter Balanced and the PARC, to assess Common Core standards. We have just completed the procurement of that Smarter Balanced Assessment to be given this year. In fact, it's on my desk right now for signature. It's all been through the procurement process, and that's an assessment tool that is nationally normed and is used in about 30 states along, we will be using it, and our contract is renewable for up to 5 years. So that issue has been resolved. That we don't have data is something that is considerably concerning to me, and the data we do have is not deep enough to tell me what I need to know about the effectiveness of curriculum and instruction and a number of other things that we're charged with. So we have the fix in place on that. Those assessments will be given in mid to late March and early April. And we'll have the data back by June, and we'll be using that to start the first really deep dive into where we've progressed or not on our strategic plan and school improvement plans. And we can break it down by student, by demographic group, by school, and also across the whole district. So it's pretty deep, and we'll be able to use that. So I guess the basic thing is that I need to tell you that mistakes or issues that were in place last year with that assessment are no longer an obstacle. We've got that one whipped, and it's done and paid for.
Duzmasi, thank you to the panel for your endurance today and answering all our questions. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Thank you, Senator Kanata, and thank you to all my colleagues who attended this hearing. And thank you for your attendance as well. To remember, this is all part of there was a slew of bills that were passed a few months back. One of those bills mandated that I conduct monthly oversight hearings of the Guam Department of Education. And so I know that this has been sometimes a tedious and difficult process, and also very frustrating, I'm sure, for both the Guam Department of Education and the committee as well. But the intent here is to keep the pressure on and to keep the information coming so that the public and the stakeholders are aware of the progress that we are making. And I know it's frustrating the progress isn't coming as fast or as soon as we'd like it to, but again, I thank you for all the information that you've provided. And I also ask that you take the suggestions and the insights of the committee to heart and move forward on some of those items that we suggested to you, Mr. Superintendent.
No, thank you for the opportunity, and I understand that this part of the process isn't always very much fun, but that's okay. Our job is to come in and deliver a program for the students and the community as a whole. I'm committed to doing that, and as you can see, there's a lot of new faces on the team now, and that was one of the things that needed to happen to correct some of the issues. And not like we also understand these are not new problems. They've been building for a lot of years, and it's going to take some time. My estimate on the cost and time to correct the facilities was in error. It was not 500 million, but more closely to 750. But the 10-year number still looks pretty accurate.
Well, I don't like that you were right, but again, it is what it is. So, and thank you also to Mrs. LePay. We'll be back here next month. I'm hoping that we'll have more progress and good news to report relative to the schools across the district and specifically to the Head Start program and the status of the quality implementation plan implementation. So, that being said, I want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. And I will see you, if I don't see you, before then, next year. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Sudos Masi. Thank you. And that will conclude this hearing, this oversight hearing of the Guam Department of Education. It's hereby adjourned at 12:44 Chamorro Standard Time. Guajusi Senador, Chris Malafunction Barnett. Está, adios, Feliz Pascua, and Viva Año Nuevo.